Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. We are live. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late, but we are here and we are ready to go. It is Friday. Kind of crazy that we got to the end of the week, just given how long the week has been. And dude, I forgot we had AMD and SpaceX earnings this week. Like when I was going through what's been happening this week, I was like, oh yeah, we had those two. Like there's been so many things that have happened this week. Obviously, we had big tech last week. And then not only that, we also got a non-farm payrolls report that was really important today. And like we needed that non-farm payrolls report to kind of get some momentum. Look at SPY right there, up 0.54%. The reason we are pumping is because we got some pretty good numbers. And the numbers on the headline might look bad, but the numbers when you look under the hood and try to understand the implication of those numbers is actually really freaking good when it comes to the biggest concern that the Fed is having right now, which ultimately is inflation. So we're going to get into that right here, but you are seeing a massively green start to the day. SanDisk up 5%. It was down 6% yesterday. AMD's up 2%. Robinhood, 93 in the pre-market. AAOI, pretty good earnings yesterday. Beat EPS by 200%. That's up 14%. Amazon is up. Nabesis, which is now the victim of a Michael Burry short, which took it down about 40% yesterday. That's up 7%. In the pre-market. Micron's up, Google's up, CrowdStrike is up, Intuit's up, Adobe is up, ServiceNow is up. I hope it's not just a pre-market pump on a Friday for the hell of it, because there's options expiring on Friday. But I think it might have to be doing with the non-farm payrolls report that was honestly pretty damn good. So we'll talk about that as we get into it, and we'll kind of understand why the market's liking this. Rocket Lab right here got rejected at 80 a couple times yesterday. It's at 79.20 pre-market, up about 5%. If this thing can just run through 80. Maybe we have a day where it actually closes above 80 for the first time in about a month, which would be very, very nice to see for Mr. Rocket Lab. On top of that, we got a bunch of earnings that we will talk about. We've already had a bunch of earnings this morning. We had a bunch of different macro stuff happen over the past 24 hours. Trump is talking again, and he said a bunch of things in an interview last night, but the number one thing that he continues to reiterate is that he wants a deal with Iran, and if we can actually get that deal with Iran, then, maybe oil, which is down the pre-market, can continue to come down. 77.06. It was at 74 a couple of days ago, then got up to 79 yesterday. So if we can get this thing back into the low 70s with the S&P at all-time highs, maybe the market actually likes what we've got going on. All right, non-farm payrolls. Let's get into it. Let's get started with that data again. Thank you everybody for being here. It was good. It wasn't good, but it was good. So the street wanted 83,000 jobs. We came in at 23,000 jobs, which initially you might think is not good. But if the street is so worried about inflation, it's really good. The labor participation rate is at 61.4%, lowest in 5 years. That's also not great, but that's definitely not, what the street expected it to, or not at a level that would be more inflationary if we were getting into that 63, 64% range. Unemployment rate is still only 4%. 4.1. It's not like unemployment is like massively increasing, which is a good thing. We've had a very strong labor market, but in that strong labor market, if we're having less jobs added than expected and the economy is already growing, GDP is good, earnings are good. It's not like we need so many jobs because people just can't find their job. Like we have a ton of jobs available. Jolt says we have 7.43 million jobs. So the labor market has never been the issue for the past couple of months now. It's always been inflation. And there was a Friday back in April where the entire market tanked because the labor market was too good, because there was too much inflation. So from that perspective, I think that's actually a really good. Was it negative 23,000 or was it 23,000 jobs added? I think it was negative 23,000. Yes, you're right. Sorry, guys. It is negative 23,000. Having said that, that's still really good because we're losing more jobs versus adding them. I know it sounds contrary to popular belief, but the point is, if inflation is the biggest concern, like why are stocks pumping right now? Because they're happy that we don't have more jobs added into the ecosystem, which would inevitably create more inflation. So, that actually makes it better. 23,000 jobs less than expected is actually, again, from the economy perspective, maybe not the best because you don't have as many jobs, although the economy has a ton of jobs already. So I think the market's just like, all right, anything that can get Kevin Warsh to not raise rates is something that's positive.
Minus 23,000 on non-farm payrolls. I can hear the bond yields falling right now, minus 23,000. That would be the second worst number of the year outside of the only other negative number, minus 156 in February. Now, if you look at the 2-month revision, another whopper, minus 103,000. Manufacturing payrolls, actually a bright spot. Manufacturing up 5,000. That would be the best since it was up 15,000 in March. And that was the high water mark going all the way back to 23. Okay, average hourly earnings, big miss, up 1/10. That's 1/3 of what we were expecting. Up 1/10 will be the lightest reading of the year. It would equal where we were last year in December. To find a lower rate, you're all the way to April of 25 at a goose egg, unchanged. Now let's go year over year earnings. Another miss, 3.2%. That's 0.3 light, and also 0.2 lighter than a revised 3.5 that turned into 3.4 last month. 3.2, obviously the lightest of the year. I have to go in the Wayback Machine to find this one. 3.2 would take me all the way to May of 21 when it was 2.3. This year's low was 3.4. You have to go way back to find a lower number. Now, hours worked, 34.3. That's the first number that came out as expected. On the unemployment rate, 4.1%, and I'm sure that's because of a labor force shrinkage. 4.1%. That would actually be the lightest of the year once again. That would equal June of last year. To find a lower number, you're in January of 25. Now, let's look at the participation rate, and this is 61.4. We're expecting 61.6. It's 1/10 lighter in the rearview mirror at 61.5. It equals where we were in Feb of 21. You're in May of 2020, COVID era, to find a smaller number. But as Treasury Secretary Besson has pointed out in numerous venues over the last week or so, that this is a demographic issue. It's not a weak economy. The rate's falling because of old and young, but that 25 to 54 age range is still doing well in terms of participation. And drum roll, please, the last part of this report is called the underemployment rate, or U6. The other rate's called U3. This also dropped 1/10 from expectations. We're expecting 8, 7.9 arrived, 7.9 equals where we were. We've had several of those readings to the lowest of the year. To find a lower number than that, you're in June of 25. Of course, interest rates move lower. Of course, you're going to see the percentage of a tightening at the September meeting move lower, and the equities don't seem to really mind it. So let's put a perspective here. We're at 417 in a 2-year. Last week, it closed at 429. Yesterday, it closed at 425. Let's look at the 10-year. It's now all the way down to 462. It closed at 474 last week, which, by the way, is the high watermark yield close. And yesterday, it closed at 468. So we see that all yields are going down, but they're going down much faster in the area of the yield curve that focuses on the Fed, short maturities. Back to you.
That was beautiful, Rick. Steve Leisman, are you going to take back?
I mean, this is pretty incredible, right? This is pretty freaking incredible. So the probability for a rate hike just went from 60% to 40% in September, just now. Just now. I mean, that is incredible. Negative 23,000. I thought it was 23,000 added. Negative 23,000 is even better, theoretically, for the market's perception on inflation, because that means we finally have some pressure that's going to stop the overall perception of a rate hike happening in a more significant way. And the thing that's interesting about this is, again, do I think we're going to raise rates in September? No, but we need some level of data to continue, whether that's oil coming down or something, to give the Fed a reason to be like, look, we don't really need to raise rates. And if you have the unemployment market or the labor market start to say, hey, you know, it's a little shaky, which means, like, if the job market is shaky, you don't raise rates, because it makes it hard for people to hire people. It makes it hard for people to pay people, meet payroll, all that stuff. If the labor market's struggling a little bit, and negative 23,000 is not necessarily struggling. We also revised June's number down by negative 37,000. Also, 2025, we like revised the numbers down by 1 million jobs in general. So like the aggregate data has shown major revisions in the labor market, but it's not 2022, 2023 type of levels where we're actually scared about the labor market because jobless claims, overall private ADP hiring has been pretty good. So, a lot of people have been asking what gets S&P 500 to 8,000. Yeah, earnings have been, incredible. But what really gets us to 8,000 is a rate cut. And if we don't get a rate cut, what definitely helps us get to 8,000 is the potential of a rate hike not being baked in as aggressively as it has been over the past couple of months, which, just this morning we had a 60% chance of a rate hike. And now this one report takes that down by 20%. The nuance here is that we can't have really bad labor data because then that would affect the economy. And if that affects the economy, that's going to affect earnings growth. But, one or two bad reports, which I guess this is not the best report that we're having this morning, that's not going to get the markets to be like, okay, we have to sell off Microsoft because, consumer demand in and of itself is bad and we can't buy stocks if, people don't have jobs. ServiceNow right there, back above 120, that's up 3%. Micron back above 900, that is also up 3%. When's the last time that happened in a meaningful way? Micron and ServiceNow up together in the pre-market. That usually doesn't happen. I think we are getting rid of the whole semi-software long short trade, and we're actually seeing both names participate up and down together. Now, silver and gold don't necessarily love that report as they continue to go higher. Gold's up another 2%. Pre-market silver's up another 5%. I think there might be a deeper corresponding reason for why silver and gold are actually getting that much of a bid, but the labor market might also be part of the reason on this report for why they're pumping. Okay, so that's what we got with the jobs report. If you are just joining, came in a lot worse than expected. The reason the market loves it is because that means there's a lot less of a chance for a rate hike actually happening in September. Kevin Warsh did say to sources yesterday, asked by the Financial Times, that he was interested in, he was open to the possibility of a rate cut. Trump commented on him today, said that he loves what Kevin Warsh is doing. He thinks he's doing a great job. So, if Trump can get oil to come down, if the labor market can continue to cool out a little bit, maybe we don't get a cut, but hopefully we don't get a hike. Trump said it's not completely up to Warsh on rate hike before the vote. I think he's great. I won't be criticizing him. It's up to Warsh a little bit on the rate hike in and of itself. All right, earnings. Let's talk about some of the earnings we had yesterday. Trade Desk, this stock continues to fall almost 20 to 30% every single print. I mean, sometimes, dude, like you got to go private or you got to get acquired. The company acknowledged that it was their fault. The company acknowledged that they, didn't live up to their standards. The company said they're going to try to be better, but their guidance was not good. I mean, Trade Desk, I don't know everything about this business, but when you're missing your numbers for 8 quarters in a row, it's one of those things where it's like, all right, something's going on right here. Something is going on right here, whether it's competitors like AppLovin or Zeta coming in and taking their lunch, whether it's, management's inability to execute, whether it's not being able to adapt to an AI world. But the guide, the street wanted 805 million. They came in at 650. Street wanted 340 million of EBITDA. They came in at 160. Like, as a public company, you cannot miss by 50% on guidance. I mean, that's just, it's not going to work. So, yeah, I mean, look, if you're in Trade Desk, you have to be in it for a specific reason, and you have to ask yourself, at what point does management actually turn this around? I think a lot of people have just given up faith in management. That's why the stock is selling off the way that it's selling off. But this is also kind of expected, given nothing has really been changing in terms of the internal dynamics of that business. But that stock is down 30% right here. In terms of the earnings that we had yesterday, let me just pull it up and let's go through some of the price action. Then we'll get into some of the earnings that we had in the pre-market. Also, Semi-Analysis came out with a report on the Googs today, which we'll talk about in a second. So yesterday we had Synaptics, that's up 3%. Serve Robotics, that's up 11 or down 11. Innodata, they had great earnings. That's up 15. Marathon, that's up 3. Ouster is now flat. Akamai, great earnings. That was up 8. Texas Roadhouse, flat. Twilio, up 20. The software names like Atlassian and Twilio crushed it. And SaaS isn't dead, which is also why ServiceNow, Adobe, Salesforce, all those names are up in the pre-market, as some of those SaaS names had some really good earnings. Atlassian up 33%, CleanSpark up 6%, Red Cat is flat, Lyft is flat, MP's up 6%, Monster is down a little bit, Airbnb is up 7%, DraftKings is up 5%, Roku is flat, and then Applied Optoelectronics is up 12%. Lots of these names were down 7 to 8% yesterday, and the only one that's still really down that bad is Serve Robotics. Many of them are recovered, and part of the reason that many of them have recovered is because of the jobs report that we just got. I mean, that jobs report, when S&P pumps by almost 1%, as you can see right here in the pre-market, everything's going to get a bid. And that's what I think we're seeing right now. Rocklab up 4%, Robinhood as well, up 3% in the pre-market. You got Palantir right here. That's up 2%, 159. Amazon's up 0.5%. Nabesis, we'll talk about Michael Burry, but that's up 5% as well. So in general, the earnings yesterday were okay. Software earnings were better than not, but the names that got hit pretty bad, I mean, they're not really feeling that price action to be as ugly as well. Oklo had earnings. That was down 2%. We'll talk about some of those numbers. Weren't really the best. But a couple of these stocks had earnings in the pre-market. Take-Two, they had earnings as well in the pre-market. They beat revenue 1.53 versus 1.41. That's up 2% year over year. Net bookings was 1.39 billion. That was down 3% year over year. EBITDA 167 versus 155. Take-Two stock price action is flat. I think Grand Theft Auto is really the only catalyst here. The numbers might not matter that much. Their fiscal year guide kind of sucks. I think they're kind of sandbagging here though, because, you know, Take-Two should be something, or Grand Theft Auto should be something that raises a lot of those numbers, but obviously they missed pretty aggressively on some of these numbers. November 19th is when they're saying the launch of Grand Theft Auto will be. They have a partnership with Netflix coming out soon as well. That will be pretty interesting for how they promote the game. But yeah, that's the big catalyst. I mean, earnings in and of itself is not like the major catalyst for Take-Two. Then you had Oklo. This was the earnings that we got this morning. Revenue of 1.2 million. Street thought it would be about 100,000, so they definitely beat on revenue. EPS was negative 28 cents versus 0.16 cents. I think this is one of the first quarters that Oklo has actually produced some positive revenue based on some of the deals they got with the DOE over the past couple months. Still losing money, still diluting shareholders, still don't have, you know, that massive hyperscaler nuclear contract that would get the stock to re-rate. But $7 billion company, down about 2% pre-market, still up a lot from the $5-6 lows from a couple of weeks ago. Danny says Q1 didn't include pre-orders. They're not increasing bookings because people could technically cancel pre-orders, so they're not increasing forward guide. That actually makes a lot of sense, and part of the reason why the guide looks as bad as it does. So yeah, that's like, I think that's why people are trying to find the trailer, right? Like the GTA 6 thesis is kind of the thesis for Take-Two, and it's one of those things where you have to wait to see how that one plays out if you are bullish on this name. But I think, you know, the broader question is everyone it's priced in that Grand Theft Auto will be bullish. The question is, how bullish will it be? And, you know, does it become one of those games that, like, for a year, it takes over the zeitgeist of how people think of this stuff? And as a result, you know, they sell a lot more games, sell a lot more digital products in those games. If that happens, which I think some people are still undercounting that it could happen, especially in the streaming era. I mean, when Grand Theft Auto 5 came out, we didn't have streaming. We didn't have Twitch, any of that stuff. So, you know, maybe that becomes a massive tailwind for them as well. Microsoft did hit 500 yesterday after hours. 501. Right now it's at 497, but we did finally touch 500 for the first time. T1 Energy right there up 7% since June of 2025 or July of 2025. So it was nice to see that. By the way, this 10-year, loving it. 10 years down, oil's down, everything you need in terms of inflation pressures easing based on this labor market report. Could you imagine if the labor market data was like plus 100,000 jobs versus 80,000 expected? I feel like everything would be down right now pre-market, because the market is so uptight on this idea that inflation is not going away and that we're going to have to hike. And if we hike, growth stocks, you know, generally don't like that. So although it's not the best for economy, it's definitely something that the market wanted, especially trading at all-time highs, right? Any excuse they had to take things down, they would have taken things down. Okay, cool. So that is what we have for some of these earnings. I think we also had some other earnings pre-market. Let me pull this up before we get into some macro. Oh, Wendy's, it was okay, but they're like taking away their guide for fiscal year 26, which is never something you want to do. Wendy's down 3%. You kind of don't want to give less numbers. So they're kind of reorganizing, but they beat on their top and their bottom line numbers. We talked about DraftKings yesterday. It wasn't too crazy right there, but that stock's up 5%. Yeah, there were no other major earnings. We talked about rocket companies yesterday. They need rates to come down, but their numbers were relatively fine as well. So, I mean, overall, the numbers that we've seen over the past couple of weeks have been really good. Definitely the numbers that we've seen this week have been good. 90% of companies in the S&P 500 are beating their numbers. It's just, once again, we're at all-time highs. So the catalyst to get even higher has to be some of this macro stuff, which is kind of what we're seeing right now. By the way, Meta just got forced to pay $567 million and $943 million in two different lawsuits last night. Meta comms director said, "We disagree with the ruling and will appeal. We work hard to keep people safe on our platforms and have been transparent about the challenges on identifying and removing bad actors and harmful content. We remain confident in our record of protecting teens online and will continue to defend ourselves against claims that misrepresent the facts." As bullish as I am on Meta, this this lawsuit drama that they're dealing with is pretty annoying. So it's one of those things where, that's a situation they're gonna have to deal with for a while. And if it doesn't get resolved, then there's just more and more of those lawsuits, and it opens the floodgates for more and more people to want to, go after them, which means their legal costs are going to go up, and that could be another hit on free cash flow. Oh, we had Doximity as well. This stock is up a lot pre-market. This stock actually got up to like almost 50%. Now it's up 30%. Revenue 156 versus 152. That's up 7% year over year. Adjusted EPS 29 cents versus 30 cents. That's down 19% year over year. I think they said something in the guide. Oh, it's still up right now in the pre-market. This is also a very small cap company, 3.71 billion. It's up 70% pre-market. From my understanding, I believe they said something in the guide around a new deal that got the street to be a bit more excited than what's happening. Martin Shkreli said it's a short. There's a pod that's blowing up, aka a fund that's blowing up. The quarter was a nothing burger, and this is a very easy short. The quarter was theoretically a nothing burger. You're not seeing anything that's serious there. Now, there are some reports that Anthropic is signing a proprietary partnership with Doximity's AI platform, and that theoretically could be the reason for why this thing is pumping the way that it's pumping. I mean, if you're an Anthropic customer and you get an exclusive deal, obviously the street is very fond of that. That's literally what happened to Akamai last quarter. They got a $1.8 billion deal with Anthropic, and that's part of the reason why it really got the pump. And they signaled another $600 million deal with a different technology company on their earnings last night. But I don't know if it should be up 75%. So that one might have some shorts coming into it as well. Okay, let's talk about what happened yesterday with Nebius, and then we'll get into some of the macro stuff. Nebius and Oracle. So your boy Burry is short Oracle and Nebius. Again, when you are short and the S&P rallies, it's kind of hard for those individual stocks to be stuck at the level that they're stuck at. But Burry is indeed short. Now, why is he short? Honestly, his argument, I'll just read to you what exactly was his short thesis. Ondas as well, up right here in the pre-market. The fish have gorged themselves on off-balance sheet liabilities, backstops, uncommenced leases, purchase commitments. The fish have gotten very fat, very large, easy to shoot. Also so large that it shan't be long before everyone kneels over for a lack of oxygen. So... he's short Nebius at 212, short Oracle at 145, basically. I don't know, dude. Like, look, if the S&P falls 5%, yeah, Nebius and Oracle are probably still going to struggle. And, there's a lot of theoretical analysis that in August, we're going to have some level of a drawdown here. Does it make sense to necessarily short these names long-term? I don't think so, especially going into earnings. But I think the earnings might be the catalyst if they don't have the numbers that are as strong as they need to be in order for Burry to kind of make money in the short. The thing is, he shorted at 211, stocks at 200. Is he really shorting this for a 10% gain, 5% gain? Or is he shorting this for like a 30, 40, 50% drawdown, which would put us back to the levels that we were at during the Leopold blowup? So if that's the case, then I would imagine he wants to see 140, 150 on Nebius, Oracle back down to the 100s. And I don't know if we easily get there. But again, I think a lot of the macro has to take a hit for us to get there. Having said that, every pre-market that we pump, market open dumps. Every pre-market we dump, market open pumps. And then throughout the day, it's just a battle between the bulls and the bears that ends up resulting in something flat to something slightly down, which is basically what we saw with Nebius yesterday, SanDisk yesterday, Rocket Lab yesterday, a lot of the high beta names. And so today's a Friday. Maybe market makers let the Friday end up running, even with options expiring, or Nebius losing 200 right there in the pre-market, 199 again. Or this thing continues to go down. And I think time will tell. But, nonetheless, he made headlines yesterday because Burry, that was the first time he ever mentioned Nebius. And I don't even think he fully understands the business, but, it's a neocloud. He doesn't believe in the neocloud. But the interesting thing about this is, why didn't he short CoreWeave? Right? Like, why was Nebius so attractive to him versus CoreWeave? I mean, they're both the most important neoclouds that are out there. And so one could argue maybe he thinks that the multiple on Nebius has become too egregious compared to the multiple on CoreWeave, even though I'm pretty sure he doesn't like CoreWeave. But yeah, it seems like he's continuing to double down on this idea of being short a lot of these different AI names. All right, Trump from last night. Here's an interview we did, and here's some of the clips that he said as well.
The next 10 years, a big political issue.
So the way you look at AI,
whoever wins AI just wins. It's that big. It's bigger than the internet by many times. It's going to be bigger than anybody ever thought possible. Not even imaginable how big. I saw Texas the other day sort of is against data centers. I think it's a mistake. And I'm not taking positions, or I'm just think it's a mistake.
The next.
So Trump says we should not be banning data centers. Then this is what he said about the golden age of America.
So, and it's because of me. Biden was against all this. I don't think Biden had any idea what it was. But our country right now is doing better than it's ever done. You know, when I see polls on the economy, I should have 150%, not 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have the greatest. This is the golden age of America. What's being built now in this country has never, ever been built. And we are literally in the golden age of America. And so.
And then this is what he said about Iran.
Guys like that get in, they'll destroy this country.
You said yesterday, you just talked about Nevada. You said yesterday gas prices, correct me if I'm wrong, they might go up again a little bit. You said.
No, that's only if I have to do another hit.
Okay, so I mean.
They'll only go down, or if we make a deal, they want to make a deal. They want to make a deal. Look, it's obvious. They don't want to be hit. Okay, they want to make a deal. So we'll see.
Because you're seeing
guys like that.
And then last clip, this is what he was saying about data centers in China.
Data centers going. So if I were a governor, I would want data centers so badly. I'll cut taxes. I mean, taxes are going to go way down because this is a tremendous source of income.
two more quick questions.
And we can't let China beat us at this. You know, a lot of people think that the campaign that's being put on is being paid for by China.
A lot of people
And
do.
we have President Xi coming here in a couple of weeks, and we're going to have a great time. But I'm going to talk to him about it. But I don't blame him. You know, we do things and they do things. But a lot of people think that because they are losing to us in AI,
One of
data centers going. So if I were a governor.
So, I mean, all of those clips, once again, it signals the same thing that at least I've been saying for the past couple of days, and I hope to be right on this, which is that Trump wants to get a deal done. I mean, there is no violent rhetoric. There's no, we got to go through a little excursion and we got to deal with higher oil prices. He's like, no, the only reason we would have to deal with higher oil prices is if I strike them again. But I don't want to. So he's kind of acknowledging like oil doesn't need to go up. The 10-year doesn't need to go up. We don't have to have credit markets freak out. They want a deal. They keep saying they want a deal. Now, do they actually want a deal? I think so. Then again, the Iranians and the IRGC are who they are, and they might want to continue creating chaos. But it feels like we're getting set up for some level of a deal that's coming in. And if we don't, then it'll be the same old story that we've been having for the past couple of months now. Bloomberg came out today and they said U.S. stocks are on track for their strongest week in months, fueled by a rebound in AI stocks, strong earnings, and hopes for a Strait of Hormuz deal. The S&P 500 is up 3% this week. The Dow's up 3% this week. The Nasdaq is outperforming with a 4% gain, and basically making the argument that if the Strait of Hormuz deal actually comes through, this will only be the catalyst to get momentum to continue going a bit higher. So I don't know, man. It feels like we're going to get there. The first week of August, we're going to end out with the S&P up 3%. I mean, S&P's at all-time highs. I know some of these AI stocks have still taken a hit, and Micron's not back at 1,000, Nebius is not back at 250, but, Rocket Lab was below 60 2 weeks ago. It's now almost at 80. Palantir was at 120. It's at 160. Like, a lot of these names have made a move, and they've been in a lot of diverse sectors. The hyperscalers, obviously, Amazon, Microsoft, Google have come back pretty decisively, which has also been pretty strong. And it's been nice to see that. SpaceX right here, it's been handling the employee unlock pretty nicely. So you had $100 billion worth of shares get unlocked yesterday. The entire space sector kind of pumped. SpaceX got a little bit of a move yesterday, then it fell, then it came back in the after hours. So overall, it's absorbing a lot of that liquidity, and stock basically is at 115, which is relatively changed from where it was right before earnings after they had the earnings a few days ago. AMD, are we back above 500? AMD 499.84. That one is also flat. Now, Google is up a little bit right here in the pre-market, but it fell yesterday. Semi-Analysis came with a report, and here's what they said. They said, we believe DeepMind is no longer a frontier lab. We believe the leadership changes show that executives were not excited for Gemini 4 Pro. Gemini 3 was the peak for Google. 3.6 Flash is worse than Muse and Grok, and we don't see Gemini 4 reversing this. Now, they went on to say that GCP is a phenomenal business and the cloud is something that Google is more focused on than Gemini itself. But the conclusion of the entire article was that Google doesn't really care meaningfully about winning in the actual layer of applications when it comes to putting the models into the enterprise. They care more about being the backend infrastructure via the cloud. And I think if you look at the numbers on GCP, that probably makes sense. 82% year-over-year growth. It's not easy to get that, and they've obviously probably worked very hard to get there. But when you look at the adoption of Gemini 3.6, Gemini 3 flat, like it's, compared to Anthropic, compared to some of these other open source models, compared to MetaMuse, Spark, Grok 4.5, GPT, it's obviously not really been exciting. And it's, it's not something that Google talked about. And their sort of core main analysis for this is that the token processing via Gemini's API declined by 38% Q over Q from Q1 to Q2, basically indicating to them that, the tokens aren't being processed anymore through Gemini in a meaningful way in the enterprise. Having said that, it's not bearish Google, because GCP is what the street cares about. I don't even think the street cares that much about Gemini in and of itself, especially when, any model can ultimately run through Google's cloud computing, which is, where they're getting 36% operating margins from. But it does highlight that leadership change, and the reason the street took it so seriously is because there were already reports that, employees at the company don't feel they're competing with Anthropic and OpenAI meaningfully in the enterprise outside of the cloud. And this kind of confirms that, their ability to be that frontier lab that's in all the benchmarks and competing very decisively might not be the case. Now, maybe Google changes that with Gemini 4 and it's just amazing. Gemini 2.5 for a while, a year ago, was like the biggest thing in the enterprise, but then you had Claude Opus, you had GPT Codex, you had all these different things come out that kind of took away the shine from the Googs. So Google stock right there is flat, but you can understand why it's down this week based on the leadership changes in the street, kind of thinking that things have changed in their approach for the enterprise. Okay, there you go. Oklo right there up 2%, Take-Two up 1.4%, SpaceX, that's up 0.5%, then Amazon, that's up 1% as well. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you guys, we got 10 minutes until the market opens. The next thing I'm going to show you guys is something that you will not be able to unsee. So I'm just warning you right now. It is 2 minutes of your life you will never be able to get back. I'm warning you right now. If you want to spend the next 2 minutes doing something productive, you can leave for the next 2 minutes and 11 seconds. But these are 2 minutes you will never get again, ever. I think it's important to show it to people because if I had to experience this shit, you have to experience it as well. And let's just say I never want to buy Bitcoin ever in my life after having watched Michael Saylor's 2-minute recap of MicroStrategy's earnings. Once again, you will never get these 2 minutes and 11 seconds of your life again. So if you want to leave for the next 2 minutes, please do. But just know you might think of crypto a little differently after you see this video. Okay. Michael Saylor posted this. Not a fan. Michael Saylor's Q2 earnings call summary. Here we go.
Good evening, shareholders. The market is pricing fear. I'm pricing Bitcoin. The quarter was rough, but the SaaS per share rose. They saw us selling. Everybody froze. 32 coins just to test the machine. 0.004%, barely seen. Then we bought 48 times more than we sold, but bears read one headline and hit caps lock bold. Own the most capital, issue the strongest credit, create the best equity, rinse and repeat it. Bitcoin is the winner. The credit turbine spins. They say the quarter's over. I say the century begins. Own the most capital, increase the sats per share. You saw us sell some Bitcoin. We bought 48 times more this year. SRC at 89.50. Everybody asks, Michael, can you bring this thing to par fast? We've got the cash, we've got the Bitcoin stacked, and nearly 1 billion left in the buyback. Not too slowly, not too quick. Calibrate the market, make the credit stick. Sure, $1 billion. Go ahead, be my guest. Pay 12% a year to help us build the best. Maybe the best way to buy the most Bitcoin is not to buy the most Bitcoin. I'm going to sell one, and then I'm going to buy 10. You want us to sell none, and somehow buy 11. With money conjured by a genie underneath the desk, we don't quite have that. We have digital credit instead. Own the most capital, issue the strongest credit, create the best equity, rinse and repeat it. We want the world's largest company. That's the company ambition. Not the most employees, not the most products, the highest valuation. Own the most capital. Let the credit turbine spin. 600 million became 60 billion. And we're only just beginning. Bitcoin is money. Everything else is credit. Thank you for joining the earnings call. We bought 48 times more Bitcoin than we sold.
I told you guys you would not be able to get those 2 minutes. Yeah, Trade Desk needed this. Trade Desk needed this. Told you would not be able to get those 2 minutes of your life back. But there you go. Yeah, I never want to buy Bitcoin again in my life. Like, I genuinely, after seeing that, MicroStrategy up 4%, I legitimately never want to touch this asset again in my life. Although the song was kind of a bop, dude. Own the most capital. By the way, I've been listening to Bohemian Rhapsody like crazy over the past 24 hours. I'm coming around to it might be one of the greatest songs of all time. I'm coming around to that. But anyway, in terms of Bitcoin, the reason why it's up right now is because for those that are just joining, the labor market data came in way better than expected for stocks, not necessarily for you know, the actual economy itself. We lost 23,000 jobs, which was good for stocks because that means there's less pressure on inflation versus an expectation of adding 83,000 jobs. Gold is up. The Fed rate hike probabilities are down. The unemployment rate fell to 4.1%, and then the jobless claims also fell down. June's number was revised by negative 37,000. So the reason why Bitcoin's up is because if we don't have to raise rates, I mean, bullish Bitcoin, bullish equities, bullish the 10-year coming down, bullish oil prices coming down. So it was one of those jobs reports where, look, if we lost like 400,000 jobs, it would be, oh, there's a problem with the labor market. There's a problem with the economy. If we lose a 23,000 jobs number and then 37,000 in June, it's like, okay, there's some small problem with the labor market, but it's not substantial enough to actually freak out. And it's also not substantially better than expected to then freak out about inflation. So there's actually a real sweet spot that the labor market is in right now. If Trump can just end this war and get oil down, we will have inflation coming back down to that hopefully 2.3, 2.4%, maybe even 2% in a year. I think, you know, at least we can get down to 2.5, 2.7 and not be at 3.5. And that would eliminate any probability of a rate cut. So that is why stocks are up right now. That's why Bitcoin's up. That's why MicroStrategy's up, because Bitcoin's up, even though maybe the song helping out a little bit. And yeah, it's actually a great start to Friday in terms of how we're thinking of, or at least how the labor or how the bond market is pricing in the probability for a rate cut, which then obviously is affecting the equity markets and how they're continuing to get some momentum. NVIDIA right there, that's up 1% as well in the pre-market as that's continued to go green. No, I didn't even know there was a movie called Bohemian Rhapsody. Someone told me about it last night from 2018. So I will watch that and Wayne's World now. That will be on my to-do list. But the song is legit, dude. The song is legit. I still don't know what man he killed or what he's talking about, but the song is legit. And I think the mystery of the lyrics itself is what makes the song exciting as well. Akamai, that's up 5%. Oracle, that's up 1.3. Nebius up 5.8. I think today's going to be a big day to see if Nebius can hold up in the midst of this new high-profile short that that we've got with Michael Burry. Take-Two's up 0.5%. Palantir's up 1.76. S&P 500, that's up 0.345. The link to that video is just on Michael Saylor's Twitter. Just go to his Twitter, and that's where you'll see that video. And then you'll be able to watch it there. The broader point from his Q2 earnings recap was that, you know, we sold Bitcoin, but that didn't matter because ultimately we were able to, you know, buy a lot more Bitcoin. And the reason they're selling Bitcoin is to continue to fund their debt obligations in private credit and be able to make sure that their shareholders on the preferred stock get the capital that they need, which gives them the stability to buy more Bitcoin long term. So that's kind of his point. It just goes against his entire thesis of like, sell your kidney, don't sell the Bitcoin. You know, and so that's why people don't necessarily love the strategy. Google right there, that's up a little bit. AMD back above 500 right there as we get into the market open, and we've got about 3 minutes left. I looked at docs. I don't know if it deserves to be up 90% here. It does feel like there's a fund that's getting squeezed out of this one. I mean, maybe that Anthropic deal is helping them. The actual numbers themselves didn't seem that impressive. Coherent, that's up 7%. You have a lot of your photonics plays. AAOI, again, we looked at their earnings yesterday. They were really good earnings. They beat EPS by 200%. They fell on a very slight guidance miss, which didn't really make sense. So the fact that it's up right now is encouraging. Lumentum, Coherent, all your photonics names should be getting some levels higher as AAOI has done very well. And I would imagine the rest of these photonics names are going to do very well as we get into earnings season. 142.36, that's up 15% right there in the pre-market. If the photonics names are up to having a good day, then maybe the memory names will participate as well. Hertz got squeezed yesterday as well. This is up 25%. It was up 30% during the day. Stock's down a lot all time. I don't know if this thing can make its way back to the $5 range, but 250 right here in the pre-market as that continues to go green. Palantir is up right here pre-market. Nebius is up right here in the pre-market. Grabs up 0.5%. MicroStrategy up 4%. Amazon up a little bit again. Bezos did sell another $340 million worth of shares yesterday and 2.8 or 4.1 billion of shares the day before. So Bezos has been taking his profits. Mercado Libre, which had a phenomenal quarter, that was down 5% yesterday. Just an incredible numbers by Mercado Libre, but that one getting hit. Fluence is up 1%. AXTI, another photonics name, that's up 5%. OSS, which fell 15% on earnings, that's up 3%. I mean, when you have the S&P rally based on that labor market data, we might be in for a full-on green day like we had on Tuesday. Maybe not full 2% on the S&P unless a lot of this rally gets sold into. And we are going to find out. Also, guys, there will not be a market close today. There will not be a market close. I have family coming over from India early tomorrow morning, so I'm going to have to leave early today. So we will not have a market close, but we'll be back, as always, on Monday. And obviously, we're having the market open right now. So we'll be taking care of some family stuff later today, and I will be back on Monday. All right, here we go. Let's see what we've got. It is Friday, August 7th. It's a long week, a lot of earnings, but we are back 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. All right, wake your asses up. Let's get into it. S&P 500. How do we open? It is green. Actually, I mean, it's green, but that candle just took it down pretty badly. 773 to 770. Look at that red candle right at the open. It's still green. Hopefully, we can kind of get back to holding on to that green, but we did have a red candle at the open, even though we are still green from the levels of last night. NVIDIA, that goes green. Google, that goes green. AMD, that goes green. Palantir, back above 160. That's up 3.79%. As that continues to hold on, let's see if we can close above 160 today. Robinhood, nice little 93.34. That's up 3%. Getting some love right there. Robinhood almost went below 90 yesterday, so that's getting a move. Microsoft back above 500. Congrats to everyone who is in Microsoft. I know this trade has been annoying for a while, but it has worked out. 350 to 501. It absolutely deserves to get a 5 handle. That's what we're seeing right now on Mr. Microsoft. Rocket Lab, that's up 3%, down from the pre-market highs of 79, but still up on the day. SanDisk, that loses 1350 from the pre-market, still up on the day, though. Trade Desk, that's down 25%. Nebius is losing everything. It hit 203 in the pre-market, right back down to 192. Nebius has entered a battle into Bury, folks. If you're heavy in Nebius, I know what you feel like. Palantir was in that battle with Bury for the past year as well. So, like, welcome to the club. You are now in a battle with Bury. And ultimately, it's going to be up to the company to have amazing earnings, to execute, to shut Bury up. But at the end of the day, a lot of people are going to follow Bury into this short, and that could be a strain on the stock in the short term. Synaptics, that's up 3%. Dell's up 0.5%. Palantir, 163. Wow, 5% candle on Mr. Palantir into the open. NVIDIA, 221. That continues to go green. Grabs up 0.5%. You've got AMD just below 500, but still up on the day. SpaceX, nice little 2% pump. That should be helping Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab getting a red candle, but I think if SpaceX gets back into that 120 range, Rocket Lab to 80 doesn't seem that crazy. Redwire, that's up. Sidus Space, that's up. Fluence, that's up. OSS, that lost all of its gains from the pre-market. Marvell, that's up 3.5%. Cloudflare crushed the earnings yesterday. Agents on the internet are rewriting the internet in terms of rewriting web infrastructure for the internet, given how much content delivery needs to be determined and orchestrated and governed via these agents. And Cloudflare, Akamai, these are some big players in the space, but Cloudflare, the biggest, 315, Stock's up 10%. Atlassian should still be up 20%. Atlassian up 35%. They got upgrades across the board this morning, 147. Wow, Hoodie, 94.20. Nice little 4% move on Mr. Hood. 5% move on Palantir. DraftKings lost its 5% gain. Innodata is up 15%. OSS still flat. Corning trying to get back to 170. This thing went from 120 to 165, which is very nice to see it get a little bit better of momentum. Bitcoin, are we up? We are 65,243. BMNR theoretically should be up as well at 1915, 5% on BMNR. Again, that's that labor market report being way better than expected for the perception of inflation coming down, and that's good for risk on assets like gold, silver, and Bitcoin. Gold, silver are also up about 4 to 5% right now. SPY 771, Nebius 192, 1% away from going red. IREN and CoreWeave. IREN's actually up 4. CoreWeave is up 5. So CoreWeave and IREN, interesting. Actually going the opposite of Nebius. Usually it's diverged to the other side, where Nebius goes the opposite of them, and that's usually up while the rest of them go down. So this is, I think this is the Burry short kind of really affecting Nebius right here compared to the other neoclouds as they are getting hit. We are seeing Broadcom also phenomenal numbers. That's up 2.3%, 430. This thing was stuck at 380 last week. It got to 360 at one point as well. Nebius also does have a 30% short float already. That's fair. And so that could be kind of having some effect on it. Wow, Microsoft. Okay, there we go. 504. Actually, it hit almost 505. Amazon and Google made their move. Meta has not made their move. Microsoft 350 to 500 has made a move, but Microsoft was at 550 last year. I mean, maybe that move is not over. Maybe that move has a lot more room to go. 503 right there on Mr. Microsoft. ASML also, after a pretty decent earnings, it was the first company to report in the tech sector along with TSM. Was not able to get the benefit of the doubt here, but that one also getting a lot of love. Palantir 164, that one continuing to hold on. Meta is 592. All your software names, I think, should be loving this, particularly because you had such amazing reports by Atlassian. Rubrik, that's up 6%. ServiceNow's got to be above 120. ServiceNow, wow, ServiceNow 124. Yeah, it's a SaaS day. It's a very heavy SaaS day. The software names, well, first semis are also pretty green. The only semis that are down, wow, Micron just flipped red. Nebius just flipped red. Okay, Micron and Nebius and Dell are red. Every other semi name, like the main ones, are up. ARM, Qualcomm, Broadcom, ASML, SMCI. In terms of SaaS, we're green across the board. Nothing's red. Snowflake's up. Datadog's up. Palantir's up. Atlassian's up. ServiceNow, CrowdStrike, Intuit, Twilio, GitLab, Adobe, Salesforce. Atlassian 37%. This thing also pumped 30% last time on earnings. It's still down pretty badly for the year, or pretty badly over the last 5 years, but SaaS summer, Atlassian year to date is still down 3% after a 30% move. AMD just flipped red. Interesting. Okay, so some high-profile semis starting to flip red. AMD, Micron, and Nebius. What about SanDisk? Very close to going red. Your photonics names are up, though. Interesting. Your coherents are up 10. Lumentum's up 7. AAOI, it should be up 15. Well, it's up 9. It lost the 15% move in the pre-market, but still up a lot. So those are also diverging pretty heavily from some of the other memory names. But SaaS has been resilient all week, to be honest. It has not given up much of the pump. And obviously Microsoft, Palantir, those companies helped with really, really strong earnings. Robinhood 93.50, Atlassian 147 up 34, Cloudflare, another SaaS company that's up 12.4%. T1 Energy, Trump announced a bunch of different polysilicon tariffs yesterday, which I don't know if that necessarily is going to affect all of the energy names that are out there, especially the solar panel companies, but theoretically could be having some impact in general on domestic manufacturing. T1 right there, that's up 11%. Where is Doximity? It was up 79%. It just got halted. I don't know if that got halted to the downside, but when it opens, it's either going to gap up from 79% up or gap down. It feels like that's a gap down. Let's see when that opens up. where that goes. Uber, which had an ugly week, 67 to 73. That's getting some recovery. That is up 3%, which is nice to see. Google just disclosed their 13F and the positions they hold. They have a $700 million position in ARM, which I didn't even know that, an $800 million position in ASTS, a $1.1 billion position in Planet Labs, $94 billion position in SpaceX. That's one that everyone knew. And then they have a $90 million position in Tempest. I didn't even know that Google owned Tempest, ARM, or ASTS, it was known. Tempest right there, that's up 5% as that continues to go green. Rocket Lab, we should see 80, folks. I mean, if SpaceX is getting a bid, almost 120, Rocket Lab should get that momentum. AMD now really feeling the pain. Nebius continuing to be below 190 right here. MCHP, yeah, Microchip, that had a great earnings as well. Again, a lot of these companies had good earnings actually, but they weren't really rewarded for them after hours. And so you're seeing it get a little bit more love. SK Hynix is in talks with advisors about a deal for a plant in China. SK Hynix is considering options for a $3 billion plant in China. SK Hynix might keep a small share in the asset. SK Hynix right there down 3%. Obviously, whatever chips they build in China, they might not be easily able to sell that to some of the American companies. But there's still plenty of demand internationally for those Chinese levels. Zeta, yeah, holding above 26 would be really important today. Anything above 25, I'm happy with, as that can normalize a little bit more. Wow, Hoodie, really going for a 94.42. Same with Palantir, almost 165. Reddit's having a nice move, 157.80. That's making an intraday high. AMD completely gives back everything. Micron basically flat. And then Nabesis basically flat as well. It's interesting, man. Every day, Nebius and Micron in particular have just been like giving the gains back, getting a little pump, and then kind of just consolidating, which one could argue is actually really healthy. It's just totally the opposite of their prior, monthly, daily, weekly performance, which is volatile up and volatile down. And for the majority of the year, it was volatile up. Amazon right there, 276. That's up 1.5% as well, as that continues to go green. TTD, are you getting some love right here? A little bit, but still down at 24% on the day. Rocket Lab, did we break 80? There she goes. Okay, so yesterday was 3 failed attempts. This one looks like a much more successful attempt, particularly because, well, one, it's 30 cents above 80. Last time we could barely get 10 cents above 80. And unless we get a red candle that takes you right back to 79.20, it looks like this one has some ability to hold, whereas yesterday was the exact opposite. Let's see if we can hold it, but 6% right there on Mr. 80 for Rocket Lab, and Microsoft 502. Oh, Palantir up 6. Okay. All right, so the names that are cooking today: Hoodie, Microsoft, Palantir, Rocket Lab, SpaceX, AAOI, T1 Energy. Doximity's unhalted. It was suspended on the way down, so it just went from 80% up to 64%. Let's see how long this holds. Again, this feels like a fund that's squeezing or getting squeezed in this position more than anything. And that could be the reason why it's getting that massive pump, or potentially that Anthropic deal. SanDisk just flipped red. Joined AMD. ServiceNow also going crazy today. Rocket Lab 80.6. You are seeing the space names and the software names start to really have some fun today. Start to really, really make a move. SpaceX 40 cents away from 120. Corning as well getting some love. See, that's the thing. It's Corning should be down on a day where some of the semis, especially large cap semis, are struggling, and it's not. Which is kind of going back to this like stock pickers market, right? Corning is not just moving with AMD or Micron, it's moving independently. And now Corning is an optics play, so it's being helped with the optics, but still, you're not seeing the optics get hit just because large cap semis are getting hit. Take Two, that's up 2%. CrowdStrike, that's up 3%. CrowdStrike's multiple is kind of crazy. Like, it's legit kind of crazy, but nonetheless, if Mythos, becomes so important, and Zuckerberg has models that are hacking different internet companies, then obviously you're going to need a lot more cybersecurity. Shopify 147, that's flat today. Shopify up 20% for the week based on their incredible earnings as well. Quantum, are we getting some love? IONQ is up today. They had good earnings 2 weeks ago, or not 2 weeks, 2 days ago. Rigetti, that's up 5%. They had a decent earnings yesterday. D-Wave had a flat earnings on Wednesday, but kind of rallying with the quantum names. That's up 7%. As that continues to go green. Amit, how do you feel about the short float on Nebius? What effect could Burry have on it? Well, the short float is 30%. It's always been a lot. Rocket Lab, 81. There she goes. Real serious volume coming in on the Lab Rockets. The problem with Burry is that, people follow him on the amount of people that followed Burry on short Palantir, it was a lot, dude. It was a lot. You had to deal with it. Constant messages and people saying, hey, what do you think? So if you're heavy in Nebius, you're going to have to deal with, if he doesn't enter the short, leave the short anytime soon, and the guy has a big ego, he's not leaving this Nebius short anytime soon. I'd be shocked if he shorted at 211 and closed it at 188. He hasn't even closed his QQQ puts all year, and he's been wrong on them. So why would he, if he's right, I think he's going to really want to be right. So you're just going to have to deal with that negative sentiment. Now, granted, Nebius can reverse it by just having a blockbuster earnings and squeezing him. But obviously that's contingent on the company massively executing. Palantir had to have 3 phenomenal quarters in a row to get Burry to shut up. And now he doesn't talk about Palantir. He has never talks about Palantir, tweets about them. And he was honestly, he was tweeting about Carp's jet expenses. He doesn't do it anymore because there's nothing to say, right? So Nebius is going to need some of that execution. And Nebius has had pretty damn good execution. But now that they've entered into the arena with a short, that execution is going to matter even more. Adobe, that's up 1% into it. That is also up 1% as well. The jobs report did come out this morning. It was a very good jobs report for the bulls because the labor market is weakening slightly, which in this all-time high of a stock market that we have, you cannot have the labor market gaining a lot of momentum because it just means that inflation has a better chance of rallying. Look, at this point of the rally, we just need inflation to come down because earnings are great. Labor market's great. You just need inflation to come down. And if you have massive, massive job growth, which we don't need because we already have pretty decent growth of jobs, then that gets inflation down and that gets the market to price out rate hikes, which is very, very important. Zeta 2626, that continues to go green as it's getting a bit more momentum. Unemployment rate is also hella low. Yeah, unemployment rate is 4.1. So we did not need to add 500,000 jobs for the market to be like, oh, everything's great. Losing 23,000 and still having an unemployment rate at record lows. I think the lowest we had was 3.5 2 years ago. We're at 4.1. It's just not something to stress about. So if Trump can just get this war to be over with, you've got a really decent labor market with phenomenal earnings across the board. Regardless of what the stock prices are doing, the earnings are amazing. And, many of those stock prices have started to reflect that. That's it. It's oil. It's inflation coming out. That's the last missing piece for this bull market to continue sustaining itself. Robin at 93.80, SpaceX almost up to 120. AAOI still up 12. That is making a move right there. Again, we talked about the SK Hynix China report that just came out. Morgan Stanley also said DRAM long-term agreements continue to lock in supply as AI demand remains strong. Essentially, they're bullish on memory. Long-term agreements coverage are reportedly targeting more agreements covering 90% of their demand. Morgan Stanley said its latest checks now show no meaningful change in the overall supply-demand conditions, which means we continue to be supply constrained, which is obviously very important for a lot of the AI trade. Nebius really taking a hit here now, 3% down as that goes red. Micron basically flat. Uber is ripping right here. Netflix is also getting a little bit of love. Uber and Netflix, both kind of at the same price as well. Reddit 158. Yeah, Reddit gave us 135 last week. So 158 right here is very nice. Wow, Rocket Lab loses it. Goodness, man. Held on to 80 for 2 minutes and then just lost it. This is the tough part about trading some of these sites. You're not sure. If you went long at 80, now you better hope this thing reverses. 79.49 right there. Where's SpaceX? Yeah, SpaceX red candles. But I'm telling you guys, I think Rocket Lab trades with SpaceX. I really do. I've been looking at these charts pretty closely for the past couple of weeks. They trade with each other. I mean, yesterday, literally when SpaceX topped at 115, Rocket Lab topped at 79.50, and then it was just downhill from there. So it's one of those things where they're stuck in that same algo. ASTS, that's up 2%, but getting a red candle right there as well. Palantir 164.40. I think the software names still hold some of their momentum. Silver and gold, I think there's a bigger reason for why they're going up. I mean, you can maybe attribute it to some of the labor market stuff today, but silver has not had a run like this in a while. Like silver for the week, if I'm not wrong, yeah, it's up 14%, dude. When's the last week in the past few months we've had a 15% move on silver? And you might be able to say it's the Fed rate hike probably is coming down, oil at 77, or Iran coming to an end, but none of those things are confirmed. So maybe silver's front running that, which is important. Admit I have that Sailor song stuck in my head right now. It's kind of catchy, bro. It's a catchy song. I just couldn't believe he posted it and he left the tweet up. Everyone in the comments was like, dude, you can still delete it. Like you don't have to leave this up. You can say you were hacked. And it's like, nope. He's like, that is the official position of MicroStrategy's Q2 earnings. Yes, copper did hit an all-time high yesterday. So COPEX should be up here. COPEX 88. It's kind of flat from where it was a few months ago, but it's up from the lows of 2 weeks ago. Yeah, and copper at an all-time high. You kind of think of where the optics space is going, and AAOI putting up really good earnings, Coherent, Lumentum. You start to see different alternatives to copper. I mean, copper's price going high actually could be positive for the overall photonics trade in terms of just the level of demand that could be there. Nebius 186, Micron literally stuck between $1, 880 to 881. Service now getting a real breakout, 124. It's been a minute. It's been a minute since we've seen Service now break above that. Palantir, I mean, 170 is $4 away. I don't know if we get it today, but if we did, it would be really psychologically nice to see. Reddit 159.70. China has been buying a lot of gold. We talked about that yesterday. The Chinese ETFs have been buying about $1 billion of gold every week. So gold has not been necessarily stopping either. Bloom Energy also, yes, losing all of their pre-market gains. Again, pre-markets over the past couple of weeks have been, or really the past couple of days have been deceitful for a lot of the high beta names, 243 to 229 on Bloom. But again, Bloom was at 160 2 weeks ago. So I feel like we all still have to be grateful that these names are up substantially from the Leopold lows. But something changed after Leopold, dude. And what changed is that these names are not the types of names that they were, where the dip would be bought immediately and everyone would just pile it. Like now they're acting like regular stocks that have to consolidate and react negatively to headlines. And, that entire liquidation kind of changed sentiment around many of those stocks. NVIDIA 222, Tesla actually getting some love today for the first time in a while, 328 as Oldemag 7 are seeing a green day besides Google and Apple. Apple's flat, Google down about 0.59. Might be a lot of other funds and retail de-risking the leverage they learned from Leopold. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the questions of last week, right? Will people actually deleverage? Like, if you went long Palantir before earnings on leverage and Palantir crushed earnings, will you actually delever and take your profits and give back the money that you owe to brokers? Or will you double down on your leverage because now you have a higher credit line because, your stocks are up 30%. So your collateralized shares go up even higher and you get more access to leverage. Like, will people learn from that situation or will people double down? And I don't know necessarily what the answer is, but it does feel like there's a little bit more responsibility going on right here. And people are getting out of leverage and taking their profits, which is, the healthy thing to do when navigating these markets. ARM right there, 291. That's up 1.5. Lam Research, that's up 2.3. Tom Lee came out with his prediction yesterday. He continues to believe that we are going to have, Uber's up 5, a 10% drawdown, but he thinks we're going to need to have 8,000 first on the S&P to get there. So originally his thesis was 7,300, and then we'll have a 10% drawdown. Now his thesis is 8,000, and then we'll get a 10% drawdown. 8,000 by the end of August. So it's not that far away. 8,000 is about 3%. I mean, that is a lot, but if the market moves like this, it could easily get there. If we get to 8,000, then we get a 10% drawdown. I think that's going to be a bit aggressive. And I don't exactly think that is how it would play out. But that's how he's going for it. Oracle right there, flat on the day as well. Palantir 166. Okay, we didn't see this yesterday. We didn't see this all week, I think. So 167 break. Palantir, I think in about like 50 cents, we break a $400 billion market cap on Palantir. We're at 399 right now. 399. ELF is up 5%. SoFi continues to go up. Palantir and NVIDIA actually having two of the biggest moves today as well. NVIDIA, we didn't touch 225 yesterday. We really tried. Reddit at 160. You got everything moving except a few of the semis, even space. Everything getting that momentum except some of the semi names. For NVIDIA, 224 is 109,000 shares. 225, once again, 427,000 shares for NVIDIA. Any thoughts on Credo? Well, Credo should be benefiting today, right? Because of the optics. They acquired a photonics company for $750 million a few months ago. Look, Credo's numbers have been amazing, and they're an important player in the broader semiconductor ecosystem. I think of them as Marvell to an extent. Now, I don't know if they're worth, 50 times earnings. I got to go deeper into the numbers for that. But, and obviously the market cares a lot more about valuation ever since the Leopold situation. But Credo is not going to be a name that doesn't benefit from the broader semi cycle. It was at 300 in June, so it topped out in June. Now it's at 240, which is not even that big of a drawdown. It got to 177 on July 29th. So, I mean, it's had a pretty big rebound from those lows. And the optics thesis behind it is still, pretty damn bullish. There you go, 167. What a candle on Mr. Palantir. I mean, we got $3 to 170, folks. Maybe. Microsoft 504. Microsoft and Palantir are the top two names in IGV. So I think you're seeing that SaaS summer thesis at least start to play out within them. And that's going to help ServiceNow, which is up 5%. That's going to help CRM, Adobe, all of those names. Zeta going to get some love on those. Boeing is up as well today. Boeing is indeed up. You got a lot of names that are persistent. Let me look at the heat map. Microsoft right there, 504. Not a horrible way to start off this Friday. There's only a few stocks that are red, right? Energy's red. Financials are flat today. They look red, but they're flat. Tech is up. Some of the semis are down. Memory in particular is getting hit. But everything else is having a relatively good day. And all the red, telecom, healthcare, it's like, 0.3, 0.4%. All that money is just going right back into tech. And you're seeing that they're in software as it's getting more of that love. Yeah, memory is definitely red today. Memory's red. Memory is indeed red. Micron, 869 now. I don't know. The same stuff I've been saying about memory for the past couple of weeks. I just think the story is kind of known at this point. I mean, Morgan Stanley literally puts out a really bullish report on LTAs this morning for DRAM. And, this happened in June. Micron will be up 20% on a report like that. Like, it's just a different sentiment around these memory names. And again, they just made a lot of moves this year. I mean, they're up 200%, 300%. SanDisk up 500%. Like, these names are up so much that them staying stuck for a while is probably healthy. It's just completely against the behavior that they've had. The only weird thing about it is the earnings continue to be amazing. Like, SanDisk demolished earnings, but it still wasn't enough. And so that's where you start asking, okay, like, what does the street need to believe in them? Like, what is the catalyst that is not known? And it's not a market thing because the market's up. Everything's up. It's like a memory-specific, sentiment-driven issue. That seems to be the problem. T1 Energy, that's up 8%. LTA is seen as limiting margins. Okay, but at least they get to keep their margins, right? Like, I'd rather have them keep 65% margins than have those margins go negative like they had in 2023, even if they're not 85%. So the growth will slow down from a margin perspective, but, if there's a stable floor at which they keep their margins, then they buy back their stock. Like that's your whole memory thesis, right? But the street's kind of rejecting that idea. And the SanDisk earnings, lack of reaction after blowout numbers, I think was part of the reason for why you're seeing that. Microsoft 502.68. That continues to go green. Why do you think energy is down? It's because oil is down today. A lot of those energy names like Bloom, T1, all those like bottleneck AI energy names, those are different from your, energy names that are correlated with natural gas and oil, but they still have somewhat of a derivative impact. If oil were to go down to 65, like you're going to see some hiccup in many of those names. That's why, a lot of the energy stocks are down right now. 1850 on SoFi. Innodata, are we red? Whoa. Did that just happen right now? 4%? No, that happened over the past 30 minutes. Yeah, that opened red. That was up 20% yesterday. That just completely went the opposite. So that one losing its momentum. They had good earnings. They beat by 90% on EPS. It was up a lot going into the print. So maybe that's why it took a breather. Shopify trying to go for 150. Vistra did have earnings today. Is that stock up? That stock's flat. From my understanding, it was a relatively light beat. There wasn't anything super exciting there. VST. Yeah, revenue they missed. Net income they missed. Adjusted EBITDA they beat. Operating income they missed pretty badly on operating income. They missed by 500 million on op. Yeah. I mean, now granted, this stock I think was a big winner this year, right? Going in. No, flat 16%. Or the past year down. All right. So the past 5 years, this is up 640%. So obviously it's done very well. But year to date, it's basically been down 15%. Yeah, so that's why Vistra down about 2.3, missed on their revenue, EPS, and guidance metrics. Palantir. Okay, let me check 170 resistance. She looks like she wants to go there. 400 billion, folks. It has been a year, but we are back to being a $400 billion company, 404 billion market cap. 170 is wow, this is ironic. That's crazy. Look at that. You guys see this? 170 has 170,000 shares of resistance. Now it's 169. That's crazy. That's poetic, dude. All right, if we break through 170, that would be fun to see. SanDisk now down 3.5%. That one just took an ugly candle down. It was only down 1. Let's see if we lose 1,200 right there. Again, after those earnings. Micron down 2. Where's Nebius? Nebius down 2 as well. Nebius down 2 as well. How about CoreWeave? That's up 2. What do you think it takes to change sentiment on memory? I'd love to hear other people's perspectives on this, but again, if you listen to the SanDisk call, which if you're in memory, you have to be listening to these earnings calls. Every single question sounded the same to me from the analysts. When will the cycle pop? And again, SanDisk, they didn't know what to say. They were just like, we don't know, but we're growing like crazy, and we have a lot of free cash flow. Down to 169 right there. And so I think the only way the sentiment changes is if Jensen or something happens in the ecosystem that proves the cycle is not going to be a boom and bust. And again, these stocks are up so much year to date, so much over the past couple of years, that now the market's thinking, okay, they've boomed. Where's the bust? And as long as the market can feel the bust is a long time away, we can keep buying these names. But I think, and it doesn't help when there's an information report that comes out yesterday that says NVIDIA is thinking of using less HBM for their Vera Rubins. Now, I know that report is old. I know that report was from a few weeks ago, but the problem is when it gets republished and it starts permeating and people start thinking, oh, does NVIDIA not need that much memory? Not because NVIDIA doesn't want memory, but because there's such a memory shortage and they're trying to maintain their pricing power that they have to reduce some of the specs that they were using historically. You get that stuff out there into the ether and it just starts to make people feel a little differently on the nature of the cyclicality on it. But I think that could change sentiment. And it's weird that they're not running today because you got the most bullish labor market you could ever get in terms of the correlation to inflation, and the S&P, everything should be up right now because rate hike probabilities went from 60% at 829 to 40% at 830 when the jobs numbers came out. That should be a catalyst for everything to get a move. And so, it feels a bit more memory specific, not market specific. So if the market rallies, I don't know if that, changes that sentiment as easily. Reddit right there, that's up 6%. Uber's up 5%. Netflix is up 0.5%. Zeta's up 2.4%. Palantir's getting rejected at 169. She's trying, but she's getting hit right there. TTD also still down. People don't like buying high and seeing the stock drop. That's also a big issue, right? A lot of these memory names had a blow off top with a lot of the semi names in general, right? And so having to DCA on those is not easy if you think the story has changed. Tesla right there at 320. I mean, why has Tesla not got back to 400? I mean, a lot of people were buying in the 400s and seeing it drop this much, it's tough. And, Tesla's earnings are nowhere near as good as Micron's or SanDisk. So it's just a bit tougher when a lot of other names are running. And the other thing about, memory and neoclouds in general is if there were Taurus that were in the sector, they were just there because it was the hot trade of the moment and they're gone. And if the hot trade is now ServiceNow, I mean, if all you care about is your money, you're not emotionally attached to the thesis, then like people might say, okay, semis were good for a bit. Now we're going to software. And so you might have some of the retail investors just like not caring about staying in those names. Cloudflare up 14% as that continues to make a move. Airbnb, yes, had a massive earnings yesterday, 15%. This stock has been stuck for so long. And so it's actually nice to see this one get a breakout because it has not gotten a breakout in a while now. Shopify, 150. There you go. That had a good earnings today. Nabesis, 183. That is the low of the day. That is the low of the day. Elon did tweet a lot about Terafab, which is also really bullish for memory because he keeps saying how much, infrastructure he needs within chips, memory, and all the other components to build that Terafab. But, that's also going to take a long time to be able to fully build out. Coherence up 11, Rubrik up 7. Airbnb was up because of FIFA. Well, they did mention that FIFA helped them when it came to tourism. And obviously that tailwind is not going to happen every year. But in general, Airbnb has been a stock. I mean, their free cash flow is incredible. It's kind of like Uber. Free cash flow is amazing, but narrative on the stock has been pretty bad. I mean, all time, they went public in 2020, stock's up 26%. Like, it really hasn't given you massive returns since then. Year to date, it's up 32. I think this is the best year they've had since they've gone public. And you're starting to see that get a lot more excitement. Bloom down 4% as that takes a hit. Okay, so your semi names, the high beta semi names, taking a breather. TSM also going down. NVIDIA's holding. AMD, TSM are down. How about Broadcom? Are you holding with NVIDIA? Broadcom is going down. If NVIDIA loses a couple bucks, it'll officially be red. Hoodie still holding 3. SK Hynix down 5. Wow, really? DA Davidson lowered their Nebius price target? Dude, these sell side, these guys are grimy, bro. What changed on Nebius for them to lower their price target? 250 to 175? That's a pretty big re-rating. They didn't even have earnings. What happened? I'm genuinely curious what happened. Like, there was no earnings on, nothing changed. SanDisk at least had earnings. DA Davidson lowers Nebius price target. Citi lowered their Micron target from 1,400 to 1,150. Dude, these guys are freaking out. They raised their price target on Nebius, by the way, on May 14th from 200 to 250. These guys are getting a little scared here. I can't see the full note. I don't see the logic behind why they're actually lowering it. But one can argue they don't like this price action, bro. That price action going against them is enough for them to... This is why with the sell side, you got to be careful. Like, you have to follow individual analysts versus like banks in general. Like, there's a few sell side that I really love, and I really trust when they put out a price target or lower a price target. And then there's others that are just Like, what happened since May 14th with Nebius? I think things only got better, unless they're reacting to a changing macro environment in which those premiums can't be held. Bitcoin still holding. Is it holding 65? Loses 65 pretty badly. Okay, there you go. $400 candle on BTC to the downside. CoreWeave still up 1.4, but that looks like it wants to go red. SanDisk down 3. Micron down 2. And then Microsoft trying to hold 500. Michael Burry scared them. Oh my gosh. That's crazy, bro. SanDisk, Micron, and Nebius. All of these guys getting their price targets hit. It's just why when things are going great, you just can't trust the price targets up unless you think there's real logic behind them. And when things are going bad, you can't really trust the price targets down. Is oil up? Oil is flat, 77.28. It was down a little bit more from here. What about the 10-year? 10 years up a little bit. Not a lot, but a little. Maybe that could be having some impact as well. Corsair had a great earnings. That's up 32%. Small cap, billion-dollar company. Probably deserves to be up. They also had a really good earnings last time as well, so makes sense why that one is making the move. NVIDIA not budging, though, 222. It's not Burry, it's Citadel. Well, see, that's the Citadel. See, this is the interesting thing. Citadel owns 5% of Netflix, Nebius now, right? Citadel's got to be motivated to get this thing to go up, or is this drawdown from 230 to 182 Citadel selling? I mean, that's another question. Like, did they really just take it from Leopold to flip it and get rid of it within a week? Because if that's the case, then same thing with Bloom, right? I mean, if they got it at 160, selling it at 220 on millions of shares is still a pretty big move. Citadel is not looking for a 10-bagger. I mean, they look for very quick moves and then they're out. If they could get 30 to 40% on their money in a week, I mean, you can't rule out the idea that they're happy with that and they're going to dump it and move on. But they would have to do it systematically. You can't just dump 5% of the shares on. Like, it's got to, they've got to be unwinding it in a way that that happens more strategically to get people to think it's not happening. Oh, it's Corsair. Why did I think it was Coursera? Oh, you're right. It is Corsair. Is there a company called Coursera too? Why did I think it was Corsair? Oh, there is a company called Coursera. Okay, well, I meant Corsair. Oh, it's public too, Coursera. That stock's down 87% all time. That one is not the one we want to look at. Corsair Gaming is the one you're looking at. That one today is up 32%. Nebius 182 lows of the day. Broadcom 423. Yeah, it's like online learning courses. I do know the company, which is why I think I got their names wrong, because I've heard of them before. I think they were popular a few years ago as well. There was a Vinland NJ data center block by city council. Was there? Oh, could this be affecting Nebius as well? Oh, yes. That actually could be part of the reason Nebius is trying to build a data center in New Jersey. But it's not officially blocked yet. Vinland Planning Board weighs AI data center expansion. It's not blocked though, right? Yeah, it's not blocked. It would be 300 megawatts. I don't think that's why Nebius is down. I think it's more Burry. You would need like a full-on moratorium of data centers. And look, at the end of the day, that would not be good for them, but they would find another place to build. So they're also building a bunch of data centers in different countries, right? Like, I don't think that's why it's down the way that it's down. Let's see if it loses 180 right here. Yeah, I'm looking at headlines right now that, I mean, city council is listening to the opposition around the data center, but it's not blocked at all. There is no actual headline that it is officially blocked. Shopify 151, that continues to be green. Rocket Lab cannot hold on to 80. It's like clockwork, man. It's like clockwork. The same exact thing happened yesterday. SpaceX actually holding on. So now this is Rocket Lab going the opposite right here. If Rocket Lab's an indicator, then SpaceX potentially takes a dip, or Rocket Lab just recovers back up to 80, as they're both still up a good chunk on the day. Nebius 182, that one's still down 4. Where is PayPal? PayPal's almost at 60. Look at that. After the earnings, stuck at 56, now it's 60. S&P 500, that goes red almost. I don't have any core headline on why SPY's red, or potentially going to go red. SanDisk, goodness gracious. We're below 1,200, folks. We're below the earnings lows. Hoodie at 93. Bloom now down 7. Micron down 4. Oracle just flipped. SK Hynix down 7. Seagate down 11. I think everyone's selling memory and going into SpaceX, dude. Like that's what it feels like it's happening. Goodness, dude. Akamai was up 7. Now it's down 2. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. The memory names are in a different field right now in terms of how the market's pursuing them. Ouster as well. They had a good earnings, but down 2%. That was up in the pre-market meta. Also goes last. Seagate's a little, what the hell is happening with Seagate? 10% down right here. Western Dig down 5. Are Photonics losing the bid as well? Usually that happens when memory loses the bid. AOI still holding 140, even though it's down from the highs, but that's actually relatively strong. Coherent, you got a red candle, but still up 9. If the Photonics names actually flip down, that would be the entire bottleneck trade reversing for today, which, you know, theoretically could happen. Question is where the money is going to, and feels like software hyperscalers in space, Uber, your sort of non-discretionary plays still getting most of it. Do you think CoreWeave and Nebius earnings could reverse it? They're going to have to, like, really have good earnings to reverse this type of sentiment. And I think it's possible they can. The problem is on their earnings, you have these little issues that come up every time. Like on CoreWeave, they were 2 quarters ago, they had a supply issue that made, you know, them unable to meet certain requirements, not last quarter, but the quarter before that. And the street took them down 20%. And it was like, you know, the street's very picky on, like, because they have so much debt, and, you know, the street's still concerned about the entire NeoCloud business. So there's all these little things out there that theoretically affect their earnings. For Nebius, I think it's just got to be ARR growth and the overall scaling of their margins. But, you know, once again, if sentiment is bad in general, those earnings just have to be like top of the line strong to get the market to ignore some of the bear cases. Like, you have to be just undeniably good. And AMD didn't have that, right? They had great earnings, but it wasn't undeniable to the point where the market's like, we have to buy AMD at $520. Like, it just wasn't, you know, does the market have that, like, we got to buy Nebius at 185, we got to buy CoreWeave at 90 type of earnings? Whereas, you know, Robinhood didn't have that either. I thought Robinhood earnings were phenomenal, but the market didn't give a shit. They didn't feel pressured to buy Robinhood at 90. Palantir at 125, the market was like, we have to buy this. And, you know, can those companies have those same numbers? SanDisk obviously did not have that type of sentiment either, as that one took a hit. SanDisk still down 4% now. Granted, it is a Friday as well, and we're only about 40 minutes into it. So let's see if algos come in and kind of reverse some of that potential pressure. Let's get a little bit of coverage right here on some of the semi names, and we'll keep going from there.
Inverted ETFs, right? So double long Hynix or triple long NVIDIA, those kind of things. And then, you know, right now on the options market, about 64% of all options are 0-day. So you just think about those, like, facts about what's going on. So, you know, guys walking around on their phone with one-day options calls on sometimes on these same ETFs. So, like, that's the kind of stuff that really fuels let's call it 100 billion plus moves in stocks at a rate you've really never seen before. So, I think some of that's behind us, and maybe won't lever and ramp at the same rate, but maybe that's healthy. Maybe we grind higher on Micron and we don't rip higher, and maybe that's, better for, broader participation.
Well, I mean, you did, I think, tell me the other day on one of the programs that you think Micron's going to double from here, right?
Yeah, I do by the end of the cycle. Look, I mean, you wake up and you see something, Hynix is going to add a lot of capacity, but like if they add a bunch in 28 and it's already a lot accounted for, look, what's in the price is something like 4 times peak and 10 to 11 times normalized earnings for Micron. I think people also assume a pretty big decay in the earnings once it peaks. And what if it lasts longer? What if the decay isn't, maybe it's an erosion, not an implosion? One of the things I've been thinking about a lot recently, Scott, is that people just only focus on the income statement, like I just mentioned, normalized and peak earnings, and not the balance sheet. Like if you're a paper boy, so you have a bad income statement, but you win the lottery, you have a good balance sheet, right? Like the amount of money these guys are making in the next year. What did Micron guide this quarter? Like 50 billion in revenue at 86% gross margin. Like they're going to generate close to 300 billion in free cash flow in the next couple of years. So like the balance sheet improvement's pretty good, right? So I think they're maybe not getting.
All right, so you got that argument that Micron to double by the end of the cycle. The question is, does it double way before that? And I think that's what people are looking for. Palantir, we are 10 cents away from trying to get to that 170. SpaceX officially hits 125, which is where it was right before the earnings. So it has recovered a decent chunk of that earnings loss, fell all the way down to 105 after earnings. 105 to 125 right there. That's up 8.79%. Palantir, 30 cents from 170. Seagate still down 8. Western Dig still down 4. S&P got a green candle up to 772. Hoodie still 94. You're seeing some of these candles come back. Reddit, nice move today, up 8%. Netflix up 1%. Zeta's up 3%. Your quantums were up 5 and 6. Now they're up 2 and 3. Tesla also a little bit down from the highs today. Same with SoFi. But Nebius is not 180 anymore. They didn't let it go below 180. It was 60 cents away from going below 180, just bounced up to 187 right there. TTD still down 19. I mean, look, double by the end of the cycle for Micron. When is the cycle ending, right? Is the question. Because if cycle ends in 5 years and Micron gets to 2,000, I don't know how much. The reason people like Micron is because it was doubling every other week, So again, if that sentiment shift might be healthy for the consolidation of the grind higher, but it might not be that type of momentum that people expected that they could get easily. Okay, Palantir has 160,000 shares at 170. Someone's got to give us a big buy right here and potentially help us get right through. There's a lot of bidding in that 169.80 to 165.70 today. Davis says, why am I going to work today? Davis is a good friend of the channel, OG Palantard. And I would imagine he's doubting going to work today, looking at the portfolio. It's always nice on those days where you have to go to work, but you walk into work knowing that you just made your yearly salary in like 5 hours. Granted, you also lost 3 years of yearly salary in March, so it's like it kind of balances out, but still. It's nice to have that feeling. Sandisk still down 4. Hoodie trying to go for 95. Yeah, SAS Summer. It's taking a place. It's like Conor McGregor walking into the office. Exactly. Where's Celsius after that earnings? Celsius getting a little rebound, up 5 after being down almost 20 or 15 yesterday. Sandisk still down 4. It bounced at 1184. Okay, Palantir, we got it again, 20 cents. It keeps getting close to get there. VIX is at 14.9. VIX is coming down very nicely. Wow, U.S. Appeals Court has blocked Trump's $400 million White House ballroom project. Okay, Trump's ballroom has been blocked from a U.S. Appeals Court as Palantir hits $170 for the first time since January 28th. There she is, folks, in her glory. 170. It has been a long 7 months to get here, but there she is. And now that she's here, hopefully we can just stay above, dude. This thing was stuck at 120 to 130 for a good 4 or 5 months right there. 170 on Mr. Palantir, and now she's moving. 170.3. That's up 9. Dude, that's a 9% day. We already had a 30% day on Tuesday. Oh, that's massive. That is absolutely massive. Imagine if you bought those like 140, 150 out of the money calls before earnings for Friday, you'd be up like 20x right now. Literally, if you actually held them until Friday. Goodness. Rocket Lab back above 80, Robin at 94, Palantir 170. Court pauses order blocking ballroom project for 14 days to allow Trump administration to appeal to U.S. Supreme Court. Trump's ballroom is going to go to the Supreme Court. That is crazy, bro. What if the Supreme Court says no? What if they say you can't build a $400 million ballroom? I mean, that would be 2 losses. One, the tariffs completely getting overturned by the Supreme Court. And now this this ballroom situation. Corey right there at 87. SpaceX, that's up 8%. Robin at 94.80. And then Palantir right there holding on to 170. Take Two also making a move right there at 240 as that continues to go green. Huh. I wonder what Trump's going to say about that, dude. I don't think he's going to be happy. I do not think he's going to be happy seeing that right there. Nebby is still 185. AMD at 480, down 1.7%. ServiceNow, 7. Does that mean he needs to stop construction? I don't know what it means. I mean, if it says the U.S. Appeal Court has blocked the ballroom project, I would imagine, yeah, unless they just ignore it. Palantir at 170.67, so we got all the way up into that 170 range. But that's weird news. We're going to have to see how market reacts to that as well, if the market has any reaction. ServiceNow, 125, as that continues to go up. Okay, so let's see what other macro data we have right here. We have the jobs report this morning. That was the most important thing. Memory stocks still taking a beating right here, unfortunately. So are your neo clouds, particularly with Nebius. Your software names, Robin at 95 as well. Your software names are the ones that are getting most of the love. Zeta's up 3. Corning still up 6. Your Photonics name's also getting some love. SK Hynix still down 5. Lumentum up 7. Meta just flipped green. Amazon green. Cloudflare up 10. Atlassian up 35. Atlassian and Cloudflare massive software names here today. Reddit also crazy move. 163 up from 135 last week. 8% itself today. And then the S&P very close to a all-time high. Very close. Less than 0.5% away from actually getting there. Is the ballroom privately funded? I think it is, but what I'm seeing is a court order that came out saying that the ballroom is now blocked. So I don't know why the U.S. District Appeal Court blocked it, but for whatever reason, it is blocked. Obviously, I think the Trump administration will just appeal this or try to appeal. Well, we're going to have to see. SPY 772. Palantir, she's going. She's knocking on 171 resistance. 50,000 shares. 50,000 shares for 171, which isn't that much given what it did to get above 170. So we got to see right here, but making a move. Let's get another of the other earnings we had yesterday, and then we'll keep going from there. Some of the memory names getting a little bit of a bounce with the neoclouds as everything's trying to turn a bit more green.
Picked up in the last 3 quarters. And then there's Airbnb, higher after raising its full-year revenue guidance. This is, I think, a 4-year high on Airbnb. Quite the breakout. Mackenzie Segalos has more on the move. Morning, Mac.
Hey, good morning, Carl. Shares surging 16% this morning as Airbnb comes off one of its strongest growth quarters in years. Revenue up 17%, with the company raising its full-year revenue and margin outlook. And in an exclusive interview after the print, CEO Brian Chesky told me that AI is probably the single biggest reason for that acceleration.
I think a year ago, it was really a question. Is AI good for Airbnb or is AI bad for Airbnb? The verdict was out last year. I think now it's safe to say AI is the best thing to have happened to Airbnb. I think we're becoming an AI native company. And I think that is probably the number one explanation for our results.
We'd want that type of analysis from every CEO that's having really good earnings to be reflected in their stock prices. Airbnb up 15%, best day it's had in 4 years. SpaceX as well, 127. That's a pretty big move. So I think there's two things that's happening with SpaceX right now. Number one is I think you could have the market makers and institutions coming in and buying up a lot of stock. Now, why would they be buying up a lot of stock? I think part of the reason for that would be they need to buy up a lot of stock to be able to make sure that the liquidity is there for people to sell stock, which means they need to obviously, get space in general to move. So that could be one of the reasons. Number two, another logical reason is you just have a lot of people that have those share unlocks that aren't selling. This is about 8% of the float officially that's unlocked, or I think about 9%. You have about obviously 91 to 89% more of the float to be unlocked over the next year. That includes Google stake, that includes Co2 stake, a lot of these companies that have been in, since the ground floor that have multi-$100 billion stakes. And those stakes obviously haven't been introduced to the public markets yet. The other reason this could be up is just the earnings reaction was delayed. I mean, that could also be a reason as well. And, the earnings were good. I don't think they were like unbelievable, but if the market's believing that Elon's going to 50x revenues by the end of 2029, yeah, the stock is cheap. It trades at 1 times revenue. It probably should be going higher. But the question is, why are they believing it today versus on Tuesday? And so that is up for debate, but it's definitely helping all the other space names. Rocket Lab right there, 80.96, back up to 81. Robinhood as well. First time we got a breakout above 95 in a couple of weeks now. As that continues to go very nicely green. Nebius also really trying to make its move up. Do you think people will sell into the strength? Yeah, I think theoretically that could also be happening. Once you get a nice little move, you could see some of these people that have been locked up for a while selling into it. So then, the cynical approach to this is that the market makers are pumping it up to create the liquidity for people to sell, get a lot more people excited, people buy in, but they're hedging all their shares with their calls or puts so that when they fall, they're delta neutral. So those shares don't really mattering. And then the stock price ends up, reflecting that and everything goes down. The more optimistic approach is that people just aren't selling and that they're available for unlock and that they don't need to sell. And, that's also very plausible. And if that is the case, then, the entire space sector is getting the benefit of that because obviously if SpaceX was following that, wouldn't be the best for Rocket Lab. ServiceNow, that's up 7% as well. Do you think oil spike over the weekend? I think no, because I think Trump is very explicitly saying he wants a deal. It was supposed to happen last Friday. Last Friday was supposed to be the biggest attack since World War II, in the words of Trump. And that didn't happen. So I don't think this weekend is... He can't afford to do it. He literally cannot afford with these bond yields to actually attack as aggressively. I think we're going to be good over the weekend. I think August, if we get oil to come down, once again, is going to be relatively decent for stocks. It's just, what surprises do we have to deal with from the seasonality perspective of how August has historically been. AMD, are we below 500? We are below 500, 479. As that continues to get hit. Yeah, August is the new July. 171 on Palantir. What a day, dude. Again, a lot of these names have had their days over the past few months, whether it's Micron or Nebius or CoreWeave, or so many of the Palantir has not had a single week this year where it's actually, really benefited shareholders to own the name financially. And this is one of those weeks where you're getting it 170, 130. Market's really giving it that momentum. Robin at 95.22, CoreWeave still up 3. Yeah, there might be shorts that are covering as well. I mean, that's fair. Shorts were down $3 billion last week, or last Tuesday on Palantir. That might be closer to like 5 or 6 billion at this point, which would also be very, very productive. Let's get some commentary on bond yields real quick, and then we'll keep getting into some of this price action as well.
Statistical things. So yes, you're right, Carl. We should view this, which is what the market is doing, as maybe things are a little bit weaker on the labor market, and that's why we're back to watching. Well, now it is really inflation, because the labor market has been definitely the backseat of the car here for the Fed. Most of the focus has been on inflation.
Without Kevin Warsh's forward guidance, how important will Jackson Hole be, and what do you expect he'll say there that could provide some more clarity on the path forward?
Well, I mean, Walsh has been very unfairly treated, because a lot of people think that forward guidance should be removed. This is not only Walsh. This was also Bill Dudley has been saying this. There's also papers by Jeremy Stein, others that have argued actually for years that removing forward guidance is a good idea. So that's why I do think that we will get an opportunity in when it will come to August and listen here in a few weeks to what Walsh is saying. And I do think we will and probably get more clarity around what is the view on all these things that the committee has been discussing on the economic outlook, on forward guidance, because this is probably a good opportunity for the FOMC and in particular for him to come out with his views.
President Trump weighing in on the Fed's decision and, sort of being a bit more restrained on where he sees rates going and whether rates should stay steady or go up. What did you make of that?
Yeah, this is a very, very important recognition by Trump and, of course, by all of us that it is not only Kevin Warsh alone who makes these decisions. There are 19 members on the FOMC, and 12 of them vote, and Walsh is only one of those voters. So the 11 other voters are also very important, and the last meeting was 9 versus 3. So therefore, the recognition by Trump that this is a committee decision, this is not Kevin Walsh who's driving the train alone, that is a very important starting point for a conversation about when will the Fed move. Because at the moment, the market, before the employment report, was saying the Fed would hike in September, and now, of course, the market is saying, well, we pushed that out a month, and now the hike is likely going to come in October.
We were talking before during the break about your chart work, which has been famous around the street for several years, but actually got boosted by Michael Burry this week, who looked at some of your charts, namely the percentage of GDP that is hyperscaler capex build out and how it's larger than the telecom was of that percentage of GDP. His argument is it shows you how cycles can unwind as quickly as they build. Is that how you see your own work?
Yeah, so what's really important about this discussion is that the speed with which the housing build out in 2005, 6, and 7 happened was actually slower than the speed with which we're doing the data center build out. So that's why the logic must be that if it takes a lot longer time or if it comes a lot quicker, must also have consequences for how we think about what could the speed of any slowdown be. That's not to say that we expect a dramatic slowdown, but it's just to say that the pace with which the housing build up came along and the pace with which the fiber optic build out came along and the pace with which today the data center build out came along. The data center build out is just a lot faster, namely twice the speed of the build out that we saw during the fiber optic build out. So the conclusion is, and this is the bottom line, if the build out happens very quickly, it also is a risk, of course, of subtracting from GDP very quickly. So this is the consideration. If there is any risk that AI is about to slow down in some form, it is at risk of also having more downside risk to the economy.
How does that make it?
Which is also why I think the memory names are getting hit right here, because if the capex happens really quickly and then dies really quickly, which again, I don't think is necessarily going to happen, but if that fear is out there, the cycle for some of these names and their pricing power also goes down.
Way into your models now?
Yeah, so the challenge, of course, is that if you look backwards, of course, hyperscaler profit margins have been very, very significant. The growth in the data center build-out has been very significant. So the bear story really rests mainly on this view that there are Chinese models coming, there are open source models coming, and these models are now going to have a significant competitive situation relative to the closed source models. So if the competitive landscape changes, maybe the backward-looking way of looking at things is not the right way. At this point, I still think that we still have at least several more quarters ahead of us because a lot of the financings for data centers have already put in place.
It's showing up in the earnings results. Caterpillar, Torsten earlier this week, a 72% increase in power generation. But if the capex build is fueled more by debt, case in point yesterday with Alphabet, another $25 billion bond sale, is that worrisome?
Yeah, this is very important because we saw about a month ago, Amazon had some challenges issuing that. And now, of course, yesterday, it was less of a problem. So this little bit pendulum swinging back and forth in terms of how easy is it for the hyperscalers to raise money to finance data centers is still a very, very important place for markets to look, because it tells you something critically about how much more is in the pipeline in terms of the data center build out, and what will the runway look like in terms of how many quarters can we still have strong growth in data center construction.
While you're here, I want to get you on the yen. This FT piece on how the ECB was blindsided by Treasury selling euros, and then some discussion about whether it's sticking, whether the intervention is sticking. Is the strategy working, do you think, so far? I know it's early.
So it's a bit unusual that the ECB did not know this, apparently, because normally all the central banks call each other and say, hey, we're about to do this. And especially if we're about to sell your currency, then normally that has, of course, involved a common discussion about this is what we're doing together. But in terms of whether it's working, it also, of course, becomes important that the underlying driver of weakness in the yen has really been the fiscal situation in Japan. And given that we switched from the carry trade, which was before Liberation Day, to now it's more driven by the fiscal situation, that means that the underlying fiscal situation, it's still okay, but there's no dramatic adjustment program from the Japanese government, and that raises the risk that you could continue to see another depreciation of the yen, meaning dollar yen going higher even after this is over, if there is no more significant adjustment coming on the Japanese side.
The intervention has also been, I think, relatively stabilizing for Japanese bond yields. Now, obviously, Japanese prime minister and their central bank is going to have to continue to have that stabilization, but it got a little weird on Tuesday, or on Friday, I should say, when Dissent had that picture taken. And, you know, it doesn't look like the market has reacted negatively to the intervention into making sure the yen is not as strengthened as it was before. Service now 125. That's still up 6. Pound here just below 160 or 170. But any close above 165, to be honest, I will be happy today. The semis continue to be hit. Micron, SK Hynix. Well, not all the semis, the memory names. The other semi names. Actually, no. ARM down. Marvell red. TSM goes red. Intel goes red. AMD's been red. SMCI, that's up 2. Dell goes red. Nebius right back down to 182 after the bounce from 180. So if it loses 180, I think it's probably going down a little further. Qualcomm somehow is holding up. Broadcom, it was up 4, now it's up 1. And then on semi, where's Circle? Circle is up as Bitcoin was up today. That's up 7. SanDisk loses 1,200 again. Yeah, I think we're just seeing is the market's picking other stocks that have not benefited all year and rewarding them for earnings, and not necessarily taking away anything from the other names that have done so well since they're up still so much, just not giving them the type of premium they were getting before. Bloom is really getting hit right here. 215, that's down 6. SpaceX, we still have 125, 120. We got to 128, now 127. Rock Lab still holding 80. As long as SpaceX is in the 120s, I think Rock Lab can try to hold 80. Akamai goes red. Akamai's earnings were actually really good. I mean, some of the stuff they talked about on the call, surprised Cloudflare is getting a bid, but Akamai is not. There's no news on Bloom. Bloom is just in that algo bucket of super high beta momentum names. Nothing specific on Bloom here. Once again, I'm really curious to see what the hell Citadel is doing, because they own a lot of these names. Like, are they unwinding them? Are they selling calls against them? What exactly are they doing? By the way, next week we should be getting all the 13Fs. Amazon took a stake in X Energy. They bought 65 million shares. That was disclosed yesterday. We don't have any of the major. Oh no, no, we don't have it yet. We have let's see. We got 3 updated yesterday. None of the big names here. Yeah, none of the big names. We have some funds, but nothing massive. We need Druckenmiller. We need Buffett. We need Ackman. We need Howard Marks. We need Daniel Loeb. Bill and Melinda Gates. Dude, how crazy is it The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation sold all of their Microsoft at 350. Microsoft's at 500. All of it they sold in March. It was 7.7 million shares. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? Like, you would think, like, Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, Bill Gates Foundation, they would hold their Microsoft out of. I mean, that's the only tech stock they have. They have Berkshire Hathaway and then Microsoft, and then the rest is just like Procter and Gamble, Kraft Heinz, all that stuff. That's crazy, right? Freaking the founder of Microsoft selling his stake in the foundation for Microsoft was the literal bottom of Microsoft. Now, obviously, the guy still owns a lot of Microsoft himself, but you don't think they bought back? I mean, I guess we'll find out, but they definitely liquidated the entire position. Let me pull it up. That's crazy. Yeah, here it is. 7.6 million shares on the Q1 release. Look at that. That was one of the large parts of the portfolio. They sold 12% of Berkshire, 100% of Microsoft. This was 350 Microsoft, 370 Microsoft. Crazy. If you bought the foundation shares, you are up. Rocket Lab once again below 80. I don't know if he's still short Tesla. I don't think he is. That was like a personal short, I think, that Bill Gates had. I don't think he's still short Tesla, but that didn't necessarily work out either. Getting smoked on AMD. Are we going back to 490? Look, same thing that Jose said. Like, and Jose has held AMD for years, right? It's like this thing just got ahead of itself. I could easily see it breaking back into the 500s if that excitement comes back, but again, it just got a little ahead of itself. It's already up 200% year to date. So I don't know. The problem, though, is that it spent a good amount of time above 500. That's the issue with some of these stocks. Like, you can say a stock's getting ahead of itself and then look back and be like, all right, well, if you zoom out, it's up so much, like it needs to consolidate. But then if it spends a meaningful amount of time ahead of itself, which is honestly what happened with the Palantir. Palantir spent so much time between like 170 and 190, which at the time it was obviously ahead of itself because the earnings weren't as good as they are right now. So when it fell to 120, it felt so dramatic, but realistically, you know, holding the 190s, the 200s, like it just didn't have the earnings power to justify it back then. Now it in my opinion, definitively does. But it was a process. It was like a 7-8 month process to even try to get back to 170. AMD spent a good amount of time in the 500s, which made you think, okay, the market's fine with it. And then any little issue, and the market looks at the multiple and says, we're not that fine with it. And then it gets hit. And I feel like that's what we're dealing with right now. Reddit up 7% right here. That one continuing to make a move. I think the only Mag 7 that's cheap right now, by the way, is Meta. Like, I mean, you could say NVIDIA and some of these names are still cheap convention, but they are not the dirt cheap levels that we saw 2 months ago outside of Meta. It feels like Meta is the only one that is still there. By the way, Tether is also buying a ton of gold. They've been trying to tokenize and digitize gold for a long time. So they've continued, them and the Chinese have continued to add gold. Mitt, do you think the bottom is in for Bitcoin at 60,000? I don't know. I mean, my gut tells me, yeah, I don't think we're really going below 60 again on Bitcoin. I think we went through that process and that should be enough. If we get a rate hike, we're going below 60. I mean, I could see that happening pretty quickly. If we don't get a rate hike, yeah, I would assume, but I don't really understand what Bitcoin reacts to at this point, because we've got some pretty bad inflation, and you know, Bitcoin doesn't care, and it was supposed to be the inflation hedge. So I don't know, but I would hope 60 is not going to be tested again. That would be nice. We looked at VST earnings in the morning. They weren't the best. They missed on a lot of different metrics, and that's why it got hit. Do you think trading gold is profitable? I think a lot of people. I've never traded gold because I just don't understand how gold works in general. But a lot of people trade gold. I mean, gold is one of the biggest assets around the world that's traded. So I'm assuming it's definitely profitable for people. Gold has compounded 12% over the past 6 years. The S&P is around 15, and then Bitcoin, even with the crappy last 2 years, has been 33% for the past 6 years. So Bitcoin has still outperformed pretty much every asset over the past 6 years. Okay, what else do we have? What else? Oh, China's developing a new model. Dude, okay, so this China open source thing, once again, I think it's really important to kind of continuously remember that if the open source models get as good as the frontier labs, it is a really big problem for Anthropic and OpenAI. OpenAI's latest headline yesterday was that they're coming out with a new device the size of a donut that's going to cost $300. And that donut is going to be like your companion when it comes to when it comes to AI. And so we're going to bring up the frontier, the open source models, because they're continuing to get a lot more excitement. And this new model out of China is like a new multi-trillion-dollar parameter model, and it's beating on certain benchmarks. KMK3 already beat Fable 5 at front-end design. It's a very simple thing for an enterprise to be like, we don't have the money to pay for this. We're going to use something open source. And if it's just as good, that meaningfully changes the dynamic around Anthropic and OpenAI. It's going to flop so hard. I don't understand what this small donut is going to do, but that also makes me scared for OpenAI, because I'm like, why are they focused on a stupid donut? They should be focused on making the best model. But if they realize the model's not profitable, then you've got a deeper issue. This was a take from Naval yesterday on what's happening with open source writ large.
Yeah. And at least historically, like if you look at things like Linux or other open source projects, once something open source kind of gets in the lead, it rarely surrenders it. And that's because an ecosystem springs up around it where everyone starts plugging into, especially in enterprise use cases. So right now, Claude and Codex are like slightly ahead of GLM, Fable and maybe a lot ahead of GLM. But if something like a GLM were ever to surpass them, it's not clear they'd get a lead back.
I mean, because how can you rationalize your limited resources at a company going into something that open source is winning at? You have to do something with your resources, and failing to catch up to open source with your precious resources is not a good use of them.
You'd have a clock. Like, so if you're OpenAI or Anthropic, you would have a certain amount of revenue and money and cash in the bank and investor backing, and you would have to use that to sort of jump meaningfully ahead of the open source and take the lead again before that runs out. So that's because like if you look at the AI race, 2 years ago, people thought that Google and Elon and Meta were also competitors.
Yeah, there were five kings.
There were five kings.
There's 2 kings now.
There's 2 kings. And why is that? Well, it's not just because those guys have the best models. OpenAI and Anthropic are the only ones that are making revenue off of their models directly. And so they're not cross-subsidizing from other business. They're not running out of cash. They're actually pouring the cash back in. And the second is because they have very active user bases, and now a lot of the improvement is coming through reinforcement learning. They're getting the guidance and the trajectories to improve the models. And so they're just pulling away. And maybe Elon, because he took SpaceX public and he's got that war chest, he gets maybe one more bite at the apple. Plus he's got the data centers in space. So, don't bet against Elon. Google, I think, has lost it.
That's quite sad.
It's
really amazing what happened.
I was always like bearish on Google. I was tweeting some pretty anti-Google management stuff back in the day, where I was like, we'll know they're serious about AI.
Gemini 3.1 Pro was like the moment. That was as good as it was going to get.
No, but it wasn't.
I still think 2.5 Pro was better.
It wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
It was. They never.
And that's basically what SemiAnalysis came out yesterday and said. If you read the report, they effectively said Gemini is done. No one cares about Gemini anymore. Gemini 4 is not going to change it. Now, they were bullish on GCP because GCP is growing like crazy. But the argument is Gemini is not going to win. The broader claim right here is that if a KMK3 or any of these other open source models meaningfully gains traction and for 1/10 of the cost, it's bullish for semiconductors. It's bullish for Jensen, which is why he's pushing Nemotron and open source, because you still have to do the inference. It doesn't take away from needing the photonics and the memory and the energy and the GPUs, the CPUs, all that stuff. But it does take away from Anthropic and OpenAI's moat if they have one. And unfortunately, they're the ones that are spending a lot of money, so it potentially takes away from the market's appetite to effectively subsidize those companies. And then you have this headline right here. OpenAI's first device is apparently a $300 to $400 AI donut. It's hockey puck size, screenless with camera and sensors. This is a fake photo. This is not an actual photo, but this is what people think it could look like. It works like ChatGPT voice mode, and part of its circular body move on their own while it responds. Coming in 2027. I just don't think anyone's going to buy this or use this. I really, Alexa's already a thing. And so this scares me because I'm like, if they're actually putting resources to this stuff, we're not talking about robots, not talking about humanoids, which ChatGPT is also focused on, but we've never got an update from OpenAI on robotics. If they're focused on these stupid devices that no one's going to use, which maybe I'm wrong, maybe everyone uses it, but I don't think anyone's going to use it, then they obviously are trying to find different business models, because if the LLM business model was going great, you wouldn't be diversifying into some of this stuff. And you might say, well, they're a company, they want to have different shots at the bat. It's no, they have a limited amount of compute. The reason they took away Sora is because it wasn't working. So even if they wanted to diversify into stuff, they had to focus on the stuff that's working. So the fact that they're actually seriously building a consumer hardware device, what's going to be the difference between that and Siri? Once you have agentic Siri, you just talk to your iPhone or your Gemini, your Google Pixel or whatever. It's does it come with real donuts? I don't know, man. It's just it's one of those things where it's weird. It is very weird. It looks lame too. I just feel like the AirPods are going to do the exact same thing. NVIDIA trying to go for 224, getting rejected at 223.50. Meta, can we hit 600 today? Meta is very close to 600. It is trying, but it is not officially got there yet. Palantir loses 170. Still somewhat green. I mean, agentic Claude already exists. My friend has his agent calling him on the phone to update him on the progress while he's camping. That's crazy. Yeah, see, Apple needs to actually incorporate that meaningfully, because I think it would be a big hit. I think people would actually pay a few bucks a month to have a real personal assistant in a meaningful way. And maybe that's, the next growth curve for at least ChatGPT on the consumer side, because they actually have all the users. So they could potentially upcharge for agents, but the enterprise is where the real money is at right now. Wow, Lumentum, yeah, taking a hit. It was up 11, now it's only up 3. Okay, so your photonics names are following your memory names. AAOI, look at that, 15 to 7. Coherent was up 10. Coherent's still up 10. So Coherent's at least holding on, even though it is down from 386 to 365. And it's hard for the photonics names to move when memory is down. They tend to go with each other. So the fact that they're even holding is pretty incredible. Microchip, that's still up 12%. Yeah, AAOI was up 19. Now it's up 8. NVIDIA not giving it back. DraftKings still up 4. And Meta at 497. Let's get an update on the non-farm payrolls from Goldman Sachs here.
Quite far below expectations, especially if you take the revisions into account. And if I look at our composite measure of underlying job growth, that was running at a little over 70,000 before this report a month ago, it's now running at 5,000. So this is basically a moving average of the payroll numbers and some weight on the household employment numbers. So for me, that's the biggest takeaway. The household survey, the unemployment rate, the labor force participation rate, that's more mixed. The unemployment rate has now come down by 4/10 from where it was late last year. But we've also had this big drop in labor force participation, and at least some of that seems to indicate to me labor market weakness. So you could spin that the household survey either way, but if you take the whole report together, it's weak.
Yeah, we're Street's obsessed with LFPR this morning. I think we've given up all of our gains going back to 21, right?
That's
do,
correct.
Do you think that's just a demographic story? Is it a human incentive behavior story too?
I think there's an important demographic element because the census results were folded into the household survey earlier this year, and that has introduced some basically statistical difficulties. So I wouldn't take this entire decline at face value. But the weakness in the last couple of months is something that I would put some weight on. And I think that does put the drop in the unemployment rate into perspective.
Given the murkiness in this labor market data, Jan, how consequential is next week's read on inflation? What could that tell us about, what the Fed could do next?
I do think the inflation numbers are going to be more important than the employment numbers. And next week, I think, is going to tell us whether the very good June inflation numbers were a one-off or maybe the start of a softer trend. We think it's probably the start of a softer trend, but that requires confirmation because obviously 1 month is not enough to base that judgment on.
The 3 dissents that we got in the last Fed meeting, you think some of that tension comes to play when they're at Jackson Hole? We'll see that come up live?
Well, they will be giving interviews, I assume, and that is usually a good source of information. And I think you'll see a range of views. And we've seen that in what some of the FOMC members have been saying since the meeting. And there's been a pretty broad range. Yeah, they really disagree. And it's an open question what happens in September. My own view is that the data is going to be benign enough, that the inflation data is going to be benign enough that they don't go. And I think the labor market numbers this morning support that as well, although, again, inflation is more important.
You've been pretty consistent in looking at the challenges on the household front in terms of disposable income and spending and what wages did this morning versus inflation. Does this bolster your case?
It reinforces the idea that real income growth for households is quite weak. And in the first half of the year, especially in April, that was basically overshadowed or offset by the tax refunds. But now that the tax refunds are in the rearview mirror, I think cash flow in the second half of the year is going to be softer. There are a lot of questions around gas prices. That's a big swing factor. But overall, I think, consumer spending is probably going to be somewhat softer in the second half of the year.
What's your view for retail sales next week? And to what degree are stock prices and gains in equities helping out on this? Or is it about saving? Is it just about the savings rate coming down into the 2s?
That's been a factor, clearly, if you just look at how the numbers are kind of shaking out. We have had strong consumer spending in the last several months, and I would expect to see some moderation in that. I don't know if that's going to show up in the monthly number next week, but I do think that as we go deeper into the second half of the year, it's probably going to be somewhat softer. The wealth effect is real, and I think it may be boosting consumer spending growth by close to 0.5 percentage point. That's been our estimate. And going into the second half of the year, I'd also expect some normalization, though obviously we'll see where the equity market goes. Our strategist's forecast is that we do see further upside, but maybe a little bit more slowly than what we've had over the last couple of years.
And then here's what Tom Lee said yesterday on why he thinks that can get to 8,000.
People who are putting out bullish notes cite both of the facts that you did. This major deleveraging process, which was a reset for the market. There was no real fundamental change in anything. It was just there was some froth that needed to be worked out. There was some leverage that got a little bit too high, and all of that needed to be worked out. And then the backbone of the whole thing, the earnings. John Waldron of Goldman was talking about that just yesterday morning.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, earnings this quarter is coming in more than $15 ahead of what people expected at the start of the quarter. But what's really more impressive is 2027 earnings are up now $8. So we're probably close to $4.10 for 2027 earnings. And we're only 3 weeks into earnings season. I actually think it might settle out closer to $4.25 by the time earnings season's over.
Sound reasonable to you? And it's not just Tom, obviously. It's, I've been hearing more 8,000 calls sort of, day by day, with Ed Yardeni saying his 82.50 could be conservative for the very reason that Tom just suggested. Earnings are just really good.
Yeah, I mean, and as we're seeing on the screen, the S&P is already at 7,700, so 8,000. No disrespect. I mean, it's not a huge lift percentage-wise.
I think the implication, though, is like that's just the next stop in this train.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing with the earnings is even if you X out technology and you subtract, say, 10 percentage points off the gross number, earnings are still good. And when you listen to it, as many of us do, any number of companies in any number of industries,
almost all of them.
Yeah, the AI story is going well from Eaton and 3M and those adjacent companies. You look at the charts of the KRE, the BKX, the financials are at highs, the KIE, the insurance companies are at highs. The commentary across the board from the card companies who I mention every quarter about consumer spending just fine. So you have all the investment themes going on, AI, power generation, et cetera, et cetera. The consumer's doing fine. Jobless claims 2 weeks in a row, sub 200. For viewers out there who are not aware, under 200,000 in jobless claims didn't happen one time from 2000 through basically through COVID. These are exceedingly incredible numbers. And so just when you take a step back from...
And again, that is why this labor market report was so important, because jobless claims have been so like basic. Like, you know, the market's expecting 220, we come in at 180, market's expecting 210, we come in at 190. We needed a weaker labor market to get the market to think inflation was calming down, which is what we got today with the unexpected loss of 23,000. And that's why stocks are rallying right here. S&P going for the high of day. If that were to be way more than expected, it would have changed. But, you know, it's actually in line with what the market needs to get inflation to try to come down.
Broad de-risking. I think that is later this year. And it probably is around this inflation derangement syndrome that is the market is very concerned about, you know, whether the Fed should be hiking in September. I think there's a real battle up until September. But our take, of course, is that inflation is much weaker. I think that there won't be a hike in September.
Well, I mean, if the market comes around to that view, then why would you have a 10% pullback? You think the market's just going to get so crazy with itself that it's going to convince itself that there's a hike coming in September? Even, by the way, amid reports in some publications that Chair Warsh is ready to do that if he has to, if inflation remains hot into that meeting.
Yeah, I think it's still hotly debated because there are economists who want the Fed to hike just to reestablish credibility with financial markets. We know the media and investors are impatient with inflation because it's at 2.6. They want it down to 2. But at the end of the day, if underlying inflation is much weaker, which is our take, then I think it's a mistake for the Fed to hike. But this is not a consensus view. I think it's still a battleground.
How about that nuance?
Did he say amid reports? Did he actually say that? Or did it sound like he said that? Oh, no, he said amidst reports, not amid reports.
Warsh is ready to do that if he has to, if inflation remains hot into that meeting. Is ready. By the way, amid reports from
it definitely sounds like he was supposed to say amidst. Yeah, I did not report that.
Convince itself that there's a hike coming in September. Even, by the way, amid reports in some public.
Dude, I wish I reported something that would get this market to just go up right here. But look at that. S&P 772. Palantir. There she goes. That candle once again trying to get up to 171. It sounded like a MIT, but it was not a MIT. It sounded like it. Man, what a day for some of these names. Microsoft still 500. Robinhood still above 90. Rocket Lab still pretty good day, even if it's just below 80. Palantir 170. Bitcoin 64, Shopify 152, Shopify breaking out above 150, Nvidia still holding on, Zeta's up 4, Netflix up. Again, that dude, if we did not get a crappy labor market report today, it would be a red day. It would be like one of those Fridays we had back in May where the labor market was so good that things went down. Like bad news really ended up being good news with rate hike probabilities going down by 20% just because we had lower jobs than expected. It's incredible. Like, you know, we haven't had one of those days where it was really bad news that turned into really freaking good news. And he did not say my name. It was a mid, but it definitely sounded like he said my name. He gave you a shout out. That would be so funny. Dude, I got to get on that closing bell one day. Scott's a legend. I want to be with him one day. Give my market analysis. That would be so cool. Problem is, I'm not like a contributor or anything, so that'd be fun though. That would be super fun. Anyway, this $8,000 target, again, like if it happens, I think it would be quite incredible this month. Let's finish with Tom Lee here, but the 10% drawdown after that, I think, would be a bit aggressive.
It is 521 today.
Yeah, because it may be reflecting on the uncertainty that is created by lack of forward guidance and lack of Fed comms, or it could be the idea that it's inflationary. We actually don't really know what's being priced into the market.
And if I can pivot off that for a second on the credibility conversation, there's a number of, I disagree that the Fed is losing credibility. I don't buy that argument. I'm not alone. I know Torsten Slok recently put out something along those lines. Robin Brooks, formerly of Goldman Sachs, on Twitter made a similar argument. We're not alone. There's a transition going on here. It's sort of the analogy I've been using is akin to letting your child cry it out when they're younger and have to go to sleep. The child is used to you coming in every day and patting you on the head and putting you to bed. And now all of a sudden daddy doesn't show up and the baby's screaming. And to some degree, the market is the screaming baby. I don't know that this is totally correct, but we'll go with it. The market is the screaming baby right now, figuring out what is the new normal in this era. And I think 50-50 in that type of environment where the Fed is not holding your hand, for better or worse, is the correct probabilistic outcome in front of a jobs report and a couple of inflation
but
reports.
my point is the market's, as to what you guys were just alluding to as well, the market's not used to going into meetings 50-50.
Sure.
It usually knows.
Well, it should probably get used to it. It should probably get used to it because according to the article today, it's here to stay. And again, that's his prerogative.
Well, now it's not 50-50 on the rate hike. Now it's more like 60-40 against the rate hike based on this labor market report. I mean, that clip was from yesterday, and they were debating if non-farm payrolls would continue to keep the Fed afraid. And it's like, no, well, the Fed can still be afraid, but like not due to this massive onslaught of inflation from the labor market, which means I think it's less. I think it's less than 50-50. It was a decent analogy. That wasn't a horrible analogy that he made. I wouldn't have said daddy on live television. I would have said mommy. I would have said something a little bit different than that word, but it was still a good analogy. His analogy was on point. I just don't think on television you would have said that word. But regardless, that's why I have the stream. I can say what I want here versus on television. Bitcoin, 64,973 on Mr. BTC. Meta's at 597, not breaking through 600 yet. Amazon, 276 as well. All right, so, I mean, overall, it's a good day outside of the neoclouds and memory. And even the memory names, Micron's down 1%. Like, it's not that big of a deal, right? It was down a lot more. Same thing with SanDisk. Nebius, it was down a lot more than this. It's still down ugly for the day, but outside of some of those stocks, your photonics names are still okay. Your hyperscalers are still okay. Uber, Netflix still okay. SK Hynix still down 5. SAS having a great day. And financials taking a breather here, but they've also had a pretty strong week. I'm not sure why InnoData dumped that hard as it did, but it did have a pretty big move going into the print as well. What are your thoughts on the Terafab in Texas? Well, so Elon announced yesterday it would be in Grimes County. I think the Terafab is obviously a massive bull case for Tesla and SpaceX. I think it's a really big bull case for semiconductors in general as that continues to grow. Oh, they actually put out a video on it. Let's watch this video. But at its core, right, the market's got to see the potential of this being monetized. And, you know, they're talking about a terawatt. It's going to take some time for this to play out. But it just means a lot of demand for a lot of parts of the semiconductor ecosystem. That looks a lot bigger than the Gigafactory in Texas already. That's kind of crazy, bro. Like, that's what they're trying to build to usher in the next 100 gigawatts of compute. I mean, now granted, that thing is going to take some time. But that goes back to the cyclicality argument. It's like, all right, if that's going to take some time, then there should be plenty of demand for all these names that are getting sold off due to fears of the market thinking the cycle's slower. And, those names likely will have earnings power for a long time, which is important. Tesla, 330 almost. Almost trying to get to 330. NY Fed, we got their report on inflation. Let's see. Reporting 3.6 versus 3.7 on expectations. 5-year inflation reports still stay at 3. They have better views on personal finance for American consumers, and they have mixed labor expectations for the month of July here. Market seems to not be worrying too much about it.
Expectations for the New York Fed's consumer expectations report were down slightly, and medium long term were unchanged. Let's take a look at the numbers here. The 1 year 3.6, that's down 0.1 percentage points, and unchanged on the 3 year and 5 year, which are the two numbers the Fed watches a little more closely. Still a little bit above expectations there. Good news for the Fed, they're not going up, but still a lingering problem that they remain elevated above the 2% target. Price expectations for gas up 1.4 percentage points to 2.9%. Price expectations for medical care and rent falling, and for food prices unchanged. Just one more headline there, expectations for U.S. The stock market hitting the highest level since April 2021, up a half a point to 41.4%. So the general public getting in on what's happening in the markets here. A disappointing jobs report suggesting some weakening in the payroll market, but at the same time, in line with relative stability, and I'll explain that. Here's the data. Down 23,000, as Carl said. June revised down 37,000 to 20,000. Unemployment rate coming down, but coming down because of a decline in the participation rate. So people dropping out of the workforce. Average hourly wages also disappointing, down 0.1%, and the year over year just 3.2%, losing ground with inflation. But interesting to look at where the jobs were and weren't. Construction, that's a strong number there, up 22,000. Manufacturing also doing reasonably well, perhaps some of that from the AI build out. But retail and leisure and hospitality especially, that could be firings from the World Cup. And local education, well, we'll have to do more investigation on that. But August is a sort of hiring month in that regard. Maybe some issues with federal funding of local education programs.
Whatever the reason is for the jobs not being good, I mean, it's enough for the market to really get a big move here. And that's what mattered. We just couldn't have had a massive, massive report and expected stocks to like that. Pound right there, still up 8.4% on the day right now. Again, those Fed probabilities, 60% to 40%. Even the NY Fed not being that aggressive with how they're thinking about inflation expectations in general at 3.5. If we get oil to legitimately get back into the 60s, we're at 78. It's a little bit of spike right there. I don't see how a hike happens. If we don't get a hike, I think we get a pump by the end of the year. Nebius, 183 once again, getting a bit more red. Yeah, leisure and hospitality was a big inflation driver as well. It's a fair point. Momentum still up 5. Meta still at 597. Rocket Lab is holding 80, even though it's been fighting with it most of the day. It's there. Palantir also trying to get right back to 170 and hold on to that. And then NVIDIA has not given up any of the gains, really. NVIDIA is actually going for the high of day. They stopped it at 223.99. Why do Nebius and CoreWeave not trade together? Honestly, their valuations have started to diverge meaningfully. Like Nebius is trading at a way higher multiple than CoreWeave. And Burry didn't short CoreWeave. He shorted Nebius, you know? So we're going to see if that continues. Fun Extreme, thank you for the super chat. I think you sent this when the Sailor video was playing. It's low-key a catchy song. It's low-key a catchy song. I really have been listening to Bohemian Rhapsody. I listened to it like literally 10, 15 times yesterday. I like the song. I am a fan of that song now. I don't know if it's the best song in the world or best song ever, but you could put it top 10. I could see you doing that. Do you really think Citadel is dumping Nebius? I am just as confused as you guys are on that. I mean, it would make sense for them to, because they got it at 140, sell it at 200, 220, 180. They made a lot of money, but then again, maybe it's half of the position. I mean, they got 5% of Nebius. So like the whole company selling half of that and keeping the other half and kind of covering your gains. It's not that crazy to potentially imagine. But we got to see if it plays out. Sing the song for us. All I'm going to say is make sure you watch the intro to Basis Points tonight. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. Make sure you watch the intro to Basis Points tonight. I think you guys will either enjoy or cringe at the intro. That's all I'm going to say. But that'll be out later today. All right, I think that is it for us, folks. No other major headlines. The big report was the labor market. Most stocks are up outside of a few memory and neoclouds, and even those names, they're down, but they're not down 7-8%. They're down about 3 to 4%. We'll see throughout the end of the day if they can recover. Your software names having a great day. Uber's up, Shopify's up, Netflix, ServiceNow, Palantir, obviously breaking 170. Microsoft leading the software names above 500, even Tessie getting some love, SpaceX getting some love. So all your space names are also making a much bigger move. And you're seeing a decent chunk of momentum regardless, along with all the earnings we had in the pre-market that were still pretty okay. Reddit, yeah, a lot of these names getting some love. Again, we will not have the market close today. Got some family coming over from India, so I'll be spending time with them over the next month, but we'll be home tonight to spend time with them. We will be back on the market open. Maybe Steve does a market close. I'll let him know that I can't do the close today. So I think Steve should be able to do the close. And we'll be back on Monday. Yeah, I'll let him know. I think he should be able to. Usually Fridays he's free in the afternoon, so I think he should be okay too. Word of the day. Let's pull it up. What do we got for word of the day? Are there any other major headlines? I don't see anything too crazy. We talked about the Trump interview from the morning. We talked about the Chinese new models getting more multi-trillion parameters. Talked about the Burry shorts, which it is what it is. PMI was really good. Labor market was great. Basent said on Iran this morning, I missed this quote, I think shortly, maybe even today or tomorrow, we are going to see an agreement, a 30 to 60-day ceasefire, and the strait will be open. Wow. He said that at 9:59. That was an hour ago. Energy prices should come down. He also says we have them by the throat. They've got 150 to 180% food inflation, and they're not able to pay their troops. Yeah, that could be part of the reason the market's getting this rally. The labor market data, but also those Basent comments around either today or tomorrow see an agreement for a 30 to 60-day ceasefire. Even again, that could be super, super bullish. My birthday is on Sunday. Emilio, happy early birthday. Enjoy your birthday on Sunday. And yeah, thank you for joining the show on Friday. Hopefully we end up having a nice little green day as we get into the weekend for your birthday. Wow, hold on. Rockstar Energy founder builds a Celsius position, wants to take over as CEO. Whoa, Celsius. I know it's been an ugly week, but that's a hell of a headline. Rockstar Energy. Who is this guy? Rockstar Energy founder. This guy, Russell Weiner. You guys know this guy? Known as Russ Savage. He sold Rockstar for $3.85 billion to Pepsi. Cactus, how much did he buy of Celsius? Is it like a 5% stake? That would be, dude, maybe that's what you need to change Celsius's trajectory as NVIDIA. There you go, 224, touches 224. 224 today. His name is legit Russell Weiner, guys. I mean, I can't make this stuff up, dude. Russell Weiner, known as Russ Savage. Wow, he's trying to turn around Celsius. Maybe this is what you need sometimes. He controls 12 million shares of Celsius, roughly 4.7% of the company. I mean, dude, talk about a headline. The earnings were bad for Celsius. It was really bad. You needed something like this to even have a chance. NVIDIA, she's going for it. 224. Celsius up 11% on that news. Huh. NVIDIA 224, Celsius getting this pump right here, right as this stake is officially disclosed. All right, a lot of different sectors of the market getting some benefits off a variety of different headlines. That jobs report was kind of the core thing that helped the entire market like it. Oklo, did we just pop on Oklo as well? Oklo was down 3%. Wow, Oklo just flipped up 10 now. Got a lot of names coming back from the lows, which, you know, maybe could happen for some of the other semi names that are getting hit right here. But Oklo was down 2, now up 10 on the earnings. All right, word of the day. Word of the day. Basis points will be out at around 6 o'clock tonight. And we will be going from there. Again, no market close today. See if Steve can do it. Celsius is up based on this Rockstar Energy founder building a stake. And then word of the day, let's pull this up. This is what we've got. Percolation. The gradual spread of something through a complex system until it reaches a point where it can suddenly propagate everywhere. AI adoption spent years percolating. Oh, I know this word. Through the economy before suddenly becoming impossible for investors to ignore. Okay. It's not too crazy of a word. Wow, that is crazy, bro. This guy already built a massive energy drink company, and now he wants to take over Celsius. His stake is worth $300 million. He's going to try to go for some for being an activist investor and essentially getting the board to get rid of the CEO. And he's going to have to at least buy 10% if he really wants any level of meaningful control. There you go. All right, folks. Thank you all for joining. We'll be back on the market open on Monday. Again, an absolute crazy week. We had AMD, we had SpaceX, we had Palantir, we had just a ton of earnings that we went through this week. It feels like it's been a long week, to be honest, just given how many companies that we had. Yeah, we'll be back on Monday for the market open. Next week's a bit more of a chill week. You don't really have crazy earnings. You have Cisco, when you have Nebius and CoreWeave, those are important. You have HIMS, Rocket Lab, but not like your major big tech companies. Oracle, Broadcom, NVIDIA are going to happen towards the end of the month. NVIDIA's on August 26th. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That is what we got. It looks like S&P is going to close at an all-time high today. If this continues, S&P right there at 773, almost 774. And although individual stocks had a little bit of a tough week, overall, well, man, it's been a massive week. And a lot of names that have been, so look at NVIDIA, almost 225. A lot of these names that have been stuck for the year are starting to come back, which is very nice to see. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining every day. I will see you guys on the market open on Monday. I'll talk to Steve to get into a close. I think Steve's about to be live actually right now. What do we spam Steve with today? Putting his link in the chat. What's a fun word, guys? Like a really fun word we can spam him with. And I'll let him know if he can do the close. Russell Weiner, do we spam him with that? Mike, and thank you, sir, for the 20 gifted. You did not have to do that. Appreciate you, man. Thank you for the 20 gifted. Z-Stack, you got a gifted. George, you got a gifted. Carl Hart, you got a gifted. Sir Charles, ZW, B Plays, you got a gifted. Zeppelin, you got a gifted. Rachel, Neil, Markey, LP, all got gifteds. Courtesy of the generosity of Mr. Mike, and thank you. I'm not going to say Mike. You guys know the last name got a gifted because he already got a gifted. I think because of Miken, which is probably why Miken gave gifted again, because he wanted some username to pop up and get a gifted and have me say that username and then have me embarrass myself in front of all these people because I say it so quickly that it sounds like I'm saying something that is inappropriate. But that's not happening this time. That's not happening this time. Oh, Jason, yes, the baby is here officially. She is here. She's beautiful. He sent me a picture last night. He said she's bigger than my first. Definitely going to be a badass. I can already tell. She's in a rush to get shit done. Came out early, already breastfeeding. No NICU needed, perfectly healthy. So very, very, very happy for Mr. Jason. And next Tuesday, he'll be on to talk more about it. But I'm so happy that he got back from New York. Like there was a 20% chance. So there was an 80% chance that his wife wouldn't go into labor until September. So he went to the New York event thinking like, cool, like the odds are on my side. But he was really nervous because, you know, you just never know. And then as soon as the event ended and he landed, she went into labor, like just perfect timing. And he's got a beautiful baby girl now. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you all. I will see you guys on Monday for the market open. Enjoy your weekend. And I will see you then. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. See you guys in a few days. Bye, everyone. Oh, wait. We got to spam Steve with a word. What's the word? It's going to go live in 1 minute. What's the word? What's the word? What is the word? We need a word. What's something that's associated with Steve that we can spam? No, we're not doing Mike. We're not doing that one. Although that would be funny. Hold on. That would be kind of funny, dude. We're doing it. Screw it. We're doing it. We are doing Mike Hawk. We're doing it. Let's see if Steve takes the bait. If I had to embarrass myself in front of everybody, Steve's going to have to embarrass himself. There you go. There's the word. Let's see. Let's see if he takes the bait. If he does, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you guys on Monday. Bye, everyone.